City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, November 22nd. Good morning. I'm Perishka Gopal-Kista. Right now in Ottawa, mainly sunny, -5. In Smiths Falls, it's -4. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The Ottawa Carleton District School Board is set to discuss a temporary mask mandate during a special meeting tonight. Here's City News reporter Chris Curries with the details.
The debate will take place after first-time trustee Dr. Nili Kaplan-Mirth called for masks to be required in the classroom. Her motion points to a recent rise in cases of RSV, influenza, and COVID, along with struggles at area ICUs and children's hospitals. It comes as a report in public schools reveals fewer than 10% of students and 15 to 20% of staff are masking up right now. And Kaplan-Mirth blames that number on peer pressure.
When you go out into an environment where you're the only person who's masking, then you are told, well, you don't really need to mask. It's not required, you know.
The biggest issue, though, is enforcement. She says the board can legislate it, and they have the legal grounds to do so. But fellow trustee Donna Blackburn strongly disagrees and says she will be voting against the motion. Chris Curry's City News.
City News time, 10:02. Now taking a look at your weather for the next few days. Here's City News meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, temperature's still below average. We've got a wind chill this morning, but that wind will settle down. Our guaranteed high +1 will increase the cloud through the day, get into some flurries at times tonight. -2 for the low. That's actually above average, though. The average low is -4. And tomorrow, mainly cloudy near 3. For today, the guaranteed high +1.
Right now, mainly sunny, -5 in Ottawa. In Smiths Falls, it's -4. The day after a significant revelation from the head of Canada's spy agency, a week of political intrigue continues today at the Emergencies Act inquiry in Ottawa. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau set to testify Friday, but today 2 of his key cabinet ministers will be in the hot seat. City News reporter Jamie Pulfer with the details.
5 weeks, more than 60 witnesses testifying at the inquiry into the government's response to the Freedom Convoy protests. Now into the final stretch and hearing from this country's top government ministers. First up today, Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino, then Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc. And as we hear from our Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney, this comes after a big revelation from the head of Canada's spy agency telling the Prime Minister and Cabinet the Emergencies Act was necessary to end this thing.
It appears to go against the arguments from critics who have said the use of the act was inappropriate since it didn't meet the national security threat threshold laid out by CSIS. The head of that agency says there are broader interpretations of a threat that are used for the Emergencies Act.
Then the big finale Friday when the inquiry actually hears from Justin Trudeau. Jamie Pulfer, City News.
And I'm Perishka Gopal-Kista. For more news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Connecting you and your community. This is the Sam Laprade Show on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, thank you so much for being with us here on City News. It has already been a fabulous morning for me. I just returned from the Big Brothers, Big Sisters Ottawa fundraising breakfast, and it was fantastic. It was a room full of community leaders and bigs and littles, and it was amazing, all to raise money to keep all of those kids that want mentors in this community to have that dream come true. So it was a wonderful morning, and Chris Phillips, the one and only number 4, the Big Rig, was their keynote speaker this morning, and he was fantastic. Appreciate that opportunity today. It certainly is going to be a busy news day today. We're going to want you to stay with us all day, of course. We wanted to start today with Stephanie Carvin, Associate Professor of International Relations at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning.
Stephanie, I've been watching closely. I know you have been too, in terms of the public inquiry into the Emergencies Act. This is a very big week in this inquiry. What are you expecting from this week?
Well, it's interesting. I think what we're already getting some surprises, actually. Like, in the report leading up to this segment from Cormac McSweeney, he talked about how the CSIS director advised that they should invoke the act, right? And this is a bit of a shock because up to this point, we had heard that basically the advice was that the 2C threshold, and by that the 2C of the CSIS Act, in other words, was there a national security threat as understood by CSIS, was not there, right? So as a result of that, the CSIS seems to have sided with the government's wider interpretation of the act, saying, okay, well, CSIS has to look at it one way, we have to look at this act another way, and therefore we argued the threshold was met and we can go for it. So, I mean, that was a pretty big moment, I think, for the what we've learned. So going from there, I think the rest of what we're going to learn this week is what were the cabinet ministers thinking, what were they asking, and why did they come to believe that this wider interpretation of, you know, what's been previously understood to be a pretty narrow threshold was acceptable, and then how and what were they kind of, you know, and then how did they believe that threshold that they had kind of, I don't want to say invented, but reinterpreted, was met.
It's so interesting because, of course, if we think back to February of 2022 and you think about the timing of when that Emergencies Act was put into play, the timing is really interesting, Stephanie, right? Would you agree?
In terms of, I'm sorry, in terms of
it was just in terms of the fact it had been going on for, you know, obviously the convoy had been going on for so long, it was put into play and very quickly it was stopped. So it was only on for such a short period of time. But certainly there was a lot of things happened because of it, and we're seeing obviously the inquiry come out of it. But you know, a lot of people have, you know, had their bank accounts affected, their livelihood affected. I mean, it was such a for such a small short period of time, there was a lot of impact.
Yeah, I don't think we should ever undersell that. I mean, I always describe the Emergencies Act as like, this is like the national security Super Bowl. This is it. This is the biggest thing you have. So you have, you know, so this is why this inquiry is so important as to, you know, whether it should have been used and whether it was done so appropriately. And yeah, I mean, like, the thing is, when the state wants to act, it can put all of its powers, you know, behind some, you know, on the people it wants to focus on, and that's a very serious thing. Now, one of the things one of the differences between the Emergencies Act, which is our current legislation, and what was invoked during the FLQ crisis back in 1970, is that this legislation has to tie itself to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So it's not a suspension of charter rights or human rights or things like that, but it allows the government to use some tools and act pretty directly without, say, always the consent of Parliament going forward. But yeah, no, this is a pretty dramatic tool, and I think we see this division. Some people saying, okay, well, you know, maybe it was an imperfect fit with the situation, but it got the job done, whereas others are saying, no, this is, you know, civil libertarians are very much concerned, and you can understand why, that this is lowering the threshold for use of our most powerful state tools. And then you have convoy supporters who are like, you know, this is just Justin Trudeau trying to find an excuse to beat down on us. So, yeah, we're seeing different narratives come out of this as a result.
Speaking about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, we know Friday is his big day in terms of testifying. Any sense of what we're going to hear there, Stephanie? What do you expect? Anything? So
I think that one of the things I'm going to be interested in seeing is actually the convoy lawyer, Mr. Miller. It's interesting because, you know, he's kind of I'll use the term disorganized. He often struggles with some of the documents, some of the terminology. He definitely struggles with names. And he has, you know, for all of his faults, has elicited some of the most interesting responses from the witnesses testifying, right? Like, some of those dramatic moments have come from his questioning of the government's handling of what happened. But this week we saw a turn in his tactics, and he now seems to be using this platform to kind of propagate a conspiracy theory that this was a plot by Liberal staffers to beat down on the protesters, and he accused someone completely baselessly, by the way, of being like a Liberal staffer in disguise who was carrying a Nazi flag. that doesn't seem to have been the case at all. And so my concern is that, as we get these more high-profile people and the networks start covering this testimony live, that what we're going to see is more kind of theatrics. And it could be some pretty sparky moments in the commission for the remainder of the week as a result.
Well, we're going to be following it very closely, as you can imagine, Stephanie, as a lot of Canadians are. And you point out something that's really important. I mean, this, at the end of the day, this is about whether the Emergencies Act was warranted or not, right? But it's also about, were people's lives affected for no reason in terms of the fact that, they had their bank accounts and all the things we just talked about. But you bring up something really important, which is, the theatrics that have gone on with this. The last thing this country needs after what happened in January and February is to be the butt of any joke on any late night comedy. We just don't need that.
No. Exactly. So, I mean, the thing is, this commission it's not for fun, right? Like, the legislation itself requires that we have a commission like this. And I think if we're going to do it in the most democratic way possible, they allowed different parties to have representation at the commission to ask questions, including different groups that actually support the convoy. But, there's a risk here that we platform the very people who have been looking for platforms for some time to spread either misinformation, disinformation, or just kind of some outright lies. And that's a concern to me too. And, and it's fair. Like, you focus on, we should be focusing on the fact that the government uses most powerful tools against people who, had their bank accounts temporarily frozen and things like this. But we actually also heard very little from the people of Ottawa themselves who lived through this. And I think this has been a bit of a source of frustration that I can see online, that people are saying, yes, we're hearing about this, but what about the people who had to live through this for weeks and weeks and weeks? So it's going to be interesting to see how the public reacts when the inevitable decision comes down. Like, is everyone just going to shrug their shoulders and say, I don't care, I just want it over with, I don't want to think about this, I don't want to hear the term convoy ever again? Or does this become an issue that drags on into, an eventual election in, 2024? So 2025, something like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this does this. What I expect is going to happen as an outcome is we're probably going to have to see some kind of legislative change to how these authorities are invoked and used in the future, and that we're going to probably have to modernize the Act. Mm-hmm.
That's going to be really interesting. That's going to be an interesting discussion too. Well, let's put it this way. It's not over, Stephanie. We're going to have lots to talk about as the week goes on. And of course, that report is due in February of 2023. So there is no time to waste. Appreciate your time today and your perspective. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Stephanie Carvin joining us, Associate Professor of International Relations at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. Appreciate her time. Boy, do we have a big show for you today. We're going to be speaking with Gary Dimmick from the Ottawa Citizen about a disgraced St. Matt's School teacher. We're going to be talking to him a little bit later about that story, which he's been following very closely. We're also going to spend time today with Kevin Donovan. And Kevin Donovan, I'm sure you've read his work before. He is with the Toronto Star. He is going to be talking today about the murders of Honey and Barry Sherman. We know that it took place a number of years ago. There have been a few new developments we want to share with you. We've been covering the story since it happened. We wanted to bring you up to date. It's just such a complicated story. Kevin Donovan has written a book about it. He follows it very closely. So Kevin's the best person to give us any of those updates. He's going to join us a little bit later in the show as well. And on the business lunch, Michael Kern's going to join us. He is, of course, the publisher of the Ottawa Business Journal, and they've got some big news to share with us today. We certainly look forward to that, and we look forward to you spending all day with us today on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. was a lot. I think I need a nap.
It was our 35th anniversary. To celebrate, we were on our way to Mama Rosie's, where we had our first date. That's when we heard coming from the radio. So we stopped and listened. It helped us get to safety. So when I think of our anniversary, because now we have even more to celebrate.
Greg. My name means everything.
Tom Longboats.
I am Wolf Clan, Onondaga Nation. I've run many different races. I've run to survive and to be free. I've run to win for honor.
His people might be lazy, but this one's damn fast.
My people respected our runners, people who carried important messages from village to village.
I need a guide to the next post. Dispatch carrier, sir. I can get you there.
God sakes, man, slow down. Who do you think I am, Tom Longboat?
No, sir. I am.
Running makes me feel alive. It's everything.
Tom Longboat was the first Indigenous person to win the Boston Marathon. He ran his way to international fame and became an inspiration to generations of athletes.
From coast to coast, all across Canada, there's something very special going on. It's time to show your support. Time to spread the word. Time to demonstrate your commitment to safe and sober driving. Join thousands of Canadians and tie a ribbon on something or someone you love. And take the time to have a real conversation about impaired driving. MAD Project Red Ribbon. Tie it, wear it, show it, share it, live it. Find out more at mad.ca.
This week on Simply Cooking by Chef, simple salads that will last all week in the fridge, give you a burst of flavor, and will please a big crowd.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, there's no two ways about it. It is a big campaign. It is one that has really galvanized this city, and it's very exciting because the Ottawa Hospital is changing, and for the better. We wanted to speak today with Tim Kluk, President and CEO of the Ottawa Hospital Foundation. Hi, Tim.
Good morning, Sam.
Tim, do you and your team work 24 hours a day, or is it just my perception?
Well, some days, some weeks, it feels a bit like that. We had a wonderful donor reception at the Coyman Galleries last evening, and many community leaders joined us to learn about the campaign and the plans for the new hospital. So depending on the day and the week, it feels like that, Sam.
Well, it's tireless work because this campaign is so important. It really is transforming healthcare in the capital, Tim, and you have some exciting news to share with us today.
Yeah, we sure do. And I guess just for your listeners again, the campaign to create tomorrow is a $500 million campaign to support two key pillars at the Ottawa Hospital. One, building the new civic development on Carling Avenue to replace the aging civic. And the second pillar is to support world-leading research at the hospital. But today, we're so excited to share the story of the Mearns family, who recently made a $1 million contribution, and their goal was to match donations up to $1 million. And as we enter this season of giving, and as we approach the holidays, no better time for them to share a message in the community and inspire others to join them in supporting the Ottawa Hospital. And what I would say, the Mearns have been wonderful longtime donors, certainly with Lisa and her brother Arnie and Vicky Mearns and son Patrick. They've been very active in the Ottawa Hospital. And this is not new to them. When we launched our COVID fund, I guess 2.5 years ago now, they made a $250,000 gift and matched again in the community. So this form of giving is well known to them, and we're really the grateful recipient, as is the City of Ottawa.
And what are those conversations like, Tim? I mean, this is what you and your team do, is inspire donors, obviously, to give back. I mean, you've got such a wonderful plan for the future, and I can almost see that campus already. You know, you've inspired me so much as well. But what are those conversations like to be able to sort of share with families like the Mearns family?
So the great news in starting the conversations right now is that we can say construction has started on the new hospital. You drive by the site today, and we are preparing the site to begin construction, phase one of the parking garage. Of course, we need the parking garage to support the couple thousand workers who will be building the main hospital. So we're starting in the ground right now. We're super excited about that this fall. But what I can say is, you're talking to families like the Mearns family or others in the community, is I think to a person, they recognize that this is an opportunity to chart a course for our city's future. And, 100 years ago, the community came together to build the original civic building. I might say just following a pandemic. And here we are in our own pandemic with the opportunity to change the face of healthcare in our community. And I think to a person that I talk to, everybody recognizes the importance of replacing such aging infrastructure with a state-of-the-art facility. So really, really positive feedback, Sam. And I know we mentioned $1 million gift from the Mearns family, but there's a place for every donor in this campaign. This is a community project that needs all of us in the community to be supportive of.
Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people, Tim, have sort of stepped up, with even, $85 a month and making a gift that way over, 5 years, and really making a commitment and knowing that their family is part of this. It to your point, it really can be a campaign everybody can feel part of, even if it was a $50 or $100 gift, right?
And it has to be that. It has to be that. We are very fortunate to have many donors at the Ottawa Hospital. And as I said, it will take a community for us to reach a $500 million goal. This is the largest fundraising campaign in our city's history. And there's an opportunity, whether you mentioned monthly donating, we have direct mail donors or people who support us online, et cetera. Also, many businesses now are reaching out to us and saying, hey, how can we support your campaign? How can I get my employees involved? Mm-hmm. And our team is happy to meet with anyone to discuss ways that you can have the most significant impact, rallying your workplace, et cetera.
And Tim, remind me a little bit of the timelines. I know it's obviously a massive project, but when are we hoping to have patients at the new hospital?
Sure. So as I said, construction started now on the garage. So that is the first phase. So now here we are, fall 2022. It's going to take about 18 months to build that parking infrastructure, which will lead us to 2024, when then we'll begin constructing the main hospital with a goal of opening the new campus to patients in 2028. So for a while we talked about this long timeline, and I would say it's getting tighter, because the reality is, starting on this parking garage, we have flipped the switch and construction started.
And you and I have talked endless times, and I'm so glad to be caught up on this campaign, and I appreciate the update today. But I can't help but think the attracting talent to the capital to keep being the world-class, healthcare facility that we are. It takes the people inside. Tim, do you think that this new campus will also keep attracting that talent to this beautiful city?
Absolutely. I think the Ottawa Hospital is one of the best kept secrets in our city, and in particular, our research enterprise and how well respected we are as a research hospital. But you're right in saying healthcare talent can go anywhere. And we do recruit nationally and internationally. And when physicians and other healthcare leaders and researchers look at their opportunities literally across the globe, they look for a place that's a teaching hospital, that is a research-intensive hospital, and it has great facilities and equipment. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, this new center that we're building. It is a building, but it's not about the building. It's about giving our professionals the right tools to do the work that they're trained to do, and also to build a facility that is designed with the patient experience at the core. Mm-hmm. You know, our existing Civic is a collection of 21 buildings over 100 years. Here we have an opportunity to build a hospital that is being designed around the patient experience.
How do you even begin to thank a family like the Mearns family?
Well, great families like the Mearns appreciate just a thank you, and they have been such wonderful partners, and to be honest, they don't expect much in return, and we're so grateful for their philanthropy, and that is, you mentioned at the outset, Sam, our work as a team and our fundraising team and meeting with donor families. It is such a wonderful part of my job to have a conversation with a family that just wants to simply make a difference. Mm-hmm. And that's our role, to help facilitate that. And you know, I feel very privileged to be in the role that I am in talking to donors who want to help shape our community.
Really appreciate your time always, Tim. I'll let you get back at it. I know there's lots of people that want to chat with you today. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Ann.
Always a pleasure. Tim Kluk spending time with us today on City News, President and CEO of the Ottawa Hospital Foundation. There really is a place for everybody in the Creating Tomorrow campaign. So definitely reach out to them if you're wanting to contribute to this hospital. And then you can, drive by and say, I was part of that, which would be very, very good for you and your family, which is great. We're going to spend some time with Julie Lalonde a little bit later, a woman's right advocate, as well as Kevin Donovan, as I mentioned, from the Toronto Star. We're also going to spend time with Gary Dimmick today, journalist with the Ottawa Citizen. We're going to be talking about the disgraced teacher from St. Matt's and the trial that's taking place. And Ben Wise always joins us on Tuesdays. We talk about the history of this beautiful city. He's from the Historical Society of Ottawa. We hope that you stay with us on Rogers TV and City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hi everybody, my name is Brian Aslan and I'm with the Commotions. We are performing Encore Ottawa 3 this week. Be sure to tune in.
It's closing time, and you stayed out longer than you planned. So now you can't drive, and the buses have stopped running. You could always call your girlfriend. Or maybe your roommate? What about your best friend? You could just dial 1-888-TAXI-GUY or use the Taxi Guy app. The call and the app are free, and they both connect you to a local cab company to bring you home safely. Visit arrivealive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive, drive sober.
After a 2-year hiatus, we are back with brand new episodes of Celebrate Ottawa starting this fall. We showcase remarkable people highlighting the city's diversity in arts, culture, sports, and nature. We will show you features that will entertain you and will even teach you new things. Join me, your host, Lila Grind, as we explore and celebrate Ottawa.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
#1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, November 22nd. Good morning. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. Right now in Ottawa, mainly sunny and -4. In Smiths Falls, it's -2. Here's what's making news this hour. New sanctions are being tacked onto Belarus due to its support of the war in Ukraine. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly announced the new measures today. Canada is adding 22 Belarusian officials to the sanctions list, including 16 companies across sectors like the military, manufacturing, tech, and engineering. Public Affairs Minister Marco Mendicino is testifying at the public inquiry into the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act. He says in the early days of the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa, some city MPs were concerned that protesters would try to find where they live. Now, he says security on Parliament Hill was also a major concern before protesters arrived, and says he was particularly worried about the safety of several colleagues, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and different female MPs. Now, Trudeau is set to testify at the inquiry later in the week. And Ottawa's new mayor is at Queen's Park today for meetings with the Premier and the Housing Minister. Mark Sutcliffe says there are a number of issues that he has to discuss with Premier Doug Ford and Housing Minister Steve Clark. This includes the promised provincial cash that the city spent on the May long weekend storm, as well as OC Transport's $85 million deficit and the controversial Bill 23. City News Time, 10:31. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, we expect the meeting tonight for the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board to go late into the evening as they debate masks in schools. We wanted to get the perspective today of Dr. Christopher Labos, cardiologist and medical journalism freelancer. Hello, Dr. Labos.
Hello there.
We've had countless conversations regarding COVID-19, and this conversation regarding masking is so important. So let's start with, do you think all kids need to be masked in school?
So that's a very difficult question to answer because you always have all these ancillary elements that come into it, the difficulty of having kids to mask, how much it's going to stress them out and all that. But there is one thing that we can say definitively. The more kids wear masks in class, the less kids are going to get sick. And that likely holds true for not just COVID, but all the other respiratory illnesses that are circulating out there right now. So I understand that people have these very, very emotional reactions to masking, and I know because I get the hate mail about it. But I think when you look at the evidence, it is pretty clear that masks work. They are not useless. They're not perfect, but they help. And when you're talking about a situation where pediatric emergency rooms and ICUs are getting overwhelmed, every little bit helps.
So why do you think there's such apprehension from the public? Do you think it's been politicized so much that really the health benefits are sort of taking a back seat?
I think there's a few reasons for it. Some of it is political, like you said. Part of it is there are bad actors out there on social media telling parents things that are not true, that masks don't work, they're dangerous. I mean, you've seen claims that have no basis in reality that, because of public health measures, children have had more depression, more suicides, none of which is true, by the way. And so, people are playing into parents' fears because parents are worried about their kids. And it's also very, very hard for people to change. When you tell people, we used to do this, and now we have to do this instead, it's very hard for a lot of people to make that change. I mean, the pull of normality, the pull of doing things exactly as we did them in 2019, is a very, very strong magnetic force. Even if what we did in 2019 was wrong and not great, a lot of people want to get back to the way things were because change is hard. And the final element to this is that our understanding of the transmission of COVID and most other respiratory viruses has changed quite a bit. And had we realized at the beginning of the pandemic how important airborne spread was, our messaging on masking would have been much more consistent. And I think a lot of that inconsistency is what people point to when they say, aha, you experts don't know what you're talking about, ergo I will do nothing. And while there's an obvious flaw to that type of nihilistic approach, it has taken root in a lot of people's minds, saying, well, if the experts can't be sure about stuff, best to do nothing. And I think that's where we've gotten to, where a lot of people are still hearing the echoes of things that were said at the beginning of the pandemic and interpret that to mean masks don't work and we don't need to use them.
Really interesting. Because I when I think about the debate that's going to be going on at the Ottawa Carleton District School Board tonight with the trustees, we have, a new trustee, Dr. Nilly Kaplan-Mirth, who's been very open about her use of masks and how she's wanting all kids to be masks. And then we've got, trustees on the other side of it saying, this isn't legal. We can't mandate this. We can't enforce it. We don't have the sort of the law side behind us. So it's going to be an interesting debate. Is this something, do you think, that in the end we're seeing so many kids sick? I mean, CHEO's overrun. They're asking, older teenagers to go to adult hospitals, those types of things. At the end of the day, what does it say about how we're caring for our kids? That's what I worry about, is parents that are, overrun because their kids are sick time and time again, or worse, they're in CHEO, they've had to be resuscitated. I mean, there's lots of that going on as well.
Right, and here's the thing. Even if you want to make the argument against having masks in classrooms because it's either impractical, difficult to enforce, too much of a hassle, especially for younger children. I've never really bought the argument that it's any great inconvenience for older children, especially when you start talking about high school and, of course, later in university. But let's say you want to make the argument that it's too hard for younger children, they don't understand what's going on, it's an inconvenience for them, et cetera, et cetera. There are alternatives that you can do. We could upgrade the ventilation status of our schools. We could put in HEPA filters, we could clean the air, not unlike what happened with a lot of businesses at the beginning of the pandemic. Dentists, right at the beginning of the pandemic, suddenly realized they were in one of the most high-risk professions with regard to the respect of COVID, and they, to a large degree, just upgraded all their offices, put in medical grade air filters in all the, rooms where they take care of patients. And that allowed them to function with, a fair degree of safety. So there are things that we can do. The problem with the debate that's going on, it's no longer about how do we best resolve this problem. There are a lot of people arguing that the problem doesn't even exist, and I think that's what's going to make it difficult to find any long-term solutions. Because if you don't agree with masks, for whatever reason, the logical counter-argument is well, no, let's do this instead. Let's install air filters in all the classrooms to make it as low risk as possible. And let's also change all the other laws that exist to make it easier for parents to stay home if their kids are sick so that they're not sending sick kids into school. So there's a lot of alternative stuff we could do. It would be more expensive, but, there is an argument for it. We just have to be willing to do it and realize that we have to do something. Doing nothing just allows the situation to remain as it is, which I hope is not something most people are willing to accept.
Well, in the reality, anyone that's ever, spent any time in a kindergarten or a grade 1 classroom knows that, there's, germs running around there like crazy. I mean, the kids are not wiping their nose with tissue. They're wiping their nose with their sleeve. I mean, this is the reality. All the HEPA filters and the masks in the world, it's still little people that normally get sick this time of year, and that's why we have this triple threat. Right. So it is difficult. I really feel for teachers and parents that have got kids of that age group, because it is really, really challenging to try and keep them healthy at the best of times.
Right. And here's the thing. And you'll never be perfect. It's a question of making things as good as possible. And this is where we get into the nihilistic trap that a lot of people have. It's well, you'll never prevent all colds. Obviously, but you can still reduce them, and that's the point. If we can reduce the problem, then we make it not as bad and not as widespread and as terrible as the situation is right now in the pediatric hospitals.
It's been certainly a very, very challenging time for people. When I think about you as a doctor and all of the things we've spoke about over the last, couple of years, Dr. Labos, did you ever think your career would talk about something that was so politicized? I mean, this isn't why you got into healthcare, right?
No, it isn't. And it's interesting that at the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't have the same degree of politicization that we were seeing in the U.S. And that was, a source of pride. But interestingly enough, over the past year, more or less, we have seen these issues. And this is problematic because, again, there are valid points of debate to be had, which is, what's the best path forward? How do we prevent illness? Do we do A or do we do B? Mm-hmm. We could have those discussions. What's not productive is the people who say, well, this doesn't, well, obviously masks work. If you want to argue against the logistical difficulties of imposing, a population-wide mask mandate, then yes, or, the logistical difficulties of doing it in school, there are arguments to be made there. But we can't dispute the fundamental truth, which is that a mask as a physical object is obviously filtering the air that's coming into your mouth. And the fact that we can't agree on those basic facts is part of the major problem we have right now.
Mm-hmm. It must be frustrating for you. I mean, when we think about all of the, the opportunity for people to come together through this pandemic, do you think in the end we've actually ended up more divided?
It's hard to say because even when you look at something like masks, I mean, we hear from a very vocal minority, and I know they exist because, they keep stalking me on Twitter. But I think most people are actually not that divided. I think most people are looking to public health for guidance. And when they get these mixed messages, this inconsistent advice, I think they get confused and they sort of just, end up relying on the status quo. I don't think most people have drunk the Kool-Aid, as it were. I think most people are still very reasonable. It's just that we don't hear from them because they go about their daily lives, and until things directly affect them, they don't get involved. And this is the problem because now it's not the beginning of the pandemic where everybody was afraid for their own personal safety. Now we're trying to make a more subtle argument, which is we need people to take actions to protect the healthcare system and protect the most vulnerable members of our society, which is a much more abstract thing, and it's hard for people to see how that affects their daily life.
Mm-hmm. It's such an interesting conversation, and it's one that's going to obviously continue. I mean, we have that big meeting happening, as I've mentioned, at the Ottawa Carleton District School Board this evening. I spoke yesterday to the Director of Education from the Ottawa Catholic School Board, and they are not going to be even debating this. They're letting students do what sort of is in their minds. They're not mandating this at all. So it certainly is interesting to see how the school boards are handling it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the problem with the free choice approach is that, peer pressure exists. It exists in schools. It exists for adults, too. If you walk into a class and you're the only one wearing a mask, even if you wanted to, you probably wouldn't because you don't want to be the one who stands out. And we have to acknowledge that there's a lot of stuff we do that is important for public health, not necessarily for individual health. And that's the other unfortunate sort of thing that has emerged as a result of these conversations. Now everybody's talking about, individual health. But the reality is sometimes we have to think about public health, which is what has led to many of the great public health interventions over the past 100 years. So there's always going to be a conflict between those two things, but public health matters even if that specific action doesn't necessarily affect you as an individual at this particular moment in time.
Dr. Labus, what was your thoughts when we saw the news come out that Dr. Kieran Moore had gone to an event, although he was telling everyone to wear masks, he went to an event and wasn't wearing a mask? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, that was disappointing, obviously. I mean, you would like people to lead by example. And here's the thing. It's not that you can't, go to a restaurant and have dinner with your family if you choose to do so or see a friend. But I think what was particularly jarring about that is just, shortly after having recommended everybody wear a mask in a public indoor setting, that you would then go to a public indoor setting with a bunch of other people and not wear a mask. I mean, even if you're going to make the excuse that you were drinking, a glass of wine, again, we can make allowances for human behavior, but the general point is that if you're going to have public events with a bunch of people, it's important to wear a mask because this is how viruses spread. And as we get into the winter months and diseases are spreading more rapidly, as we start to see more flu, more COVID, and more everything else, this is going to become increasingly important. And at a certain point, we're going to need public health and politicians to be the example and to show people that, you can enjoy yourself and wear a mask if you're going to be in a setting like that, because getting sick is not fun and getting sick doesn't help anybody.
Really appreciate your time as always. Thank you, Dr. Labos.
My pleasure. Take care.
Dr. Christopher Labo spending time with us again today, cardiologist and medical journalism freelancer. We appreciate everything that he has done for us over the last couple of years. He's always been very good to come on the show. When we come back, Julie Lalonde is going to be here. We're going to be talking about a sexual assault case here in the Ottawa area. It might surprise you to hear what's gone on here, and we want to share this news because, well, we don't think a lot of people are. Julie Lalonde is going to join us. She is a women's right advocate. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hi, my name's Ange. I'm from the Angelina Hunter Trio. We will be performing this week as part of Encore Ottawa 3, and we really hope that you enjoy our set.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
On Tuesday's Daytime Ottawa, we'll tell you about local artisans, a great place to find some wonderful handmade gift ideas. And the Christmas Smiles campaign is back. This is being put on by W Flowers. We'll tell you how you can get involved and really help put a smile on someone's face over the holiday season. And the month of November is Diabetes Awareness Month. In this particular segment, we're going to talk about prevention. All that and more on Tuesday.
Hi, I'm Meg from AIM Fitness, and I'm here with my buddy Fit Finley. Join us every week for Fit Over 50. We'll take you through some low-impact and high-intensity workouts designed to improve your strength and your balance. All you'll need is a resistance band, some light hand weights, and also your water bottle and a sturdy chair. Tune in right here on Rogers TV and let us be part of your weekly routine.
What is it?
Anxiety disorder. Depression.
Clear.
PTSD. 1 in 2. A flip of a coin. That's the same chance we'll experience a mental illness by the time we're 40. $1 a day can help change those odds and bring hope to those in need.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
This week on Simply Cooking by Chef, simple salads that will last all week in the fridge, give you a burst of flavor, and will please a big crowd.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Thank you again for spending time with us here on City News. I'm Sam Laprade. I wanted to spend time today with Julie Lalonde, a women's right advocate, about a story that was brought to my attention regarding a sexual assault case here in the capital. Hello, Julie.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Julie. Julie, you're going to know better than me. So I wanted to bring attention to this case because I'm a bit surprised about what's happened. So it's my understanding that there is someone in this city who's committed sexual assaults. My understanding his name is John Sean Anderson, and that he has been convicted, but yet he continues to live in this community and has not been sentenced yet. Is that normal, Julie?
Unfortunately, it is. Yeah, we do see that even in cases where people have been convicted, So it's not a matter of, innocent until proven guilty. The system has decided this person is guilty, and still they get to live in relative freedom. Even when we're looking at cases like Jacob Hogard, the former frontman for the band Headley, he's been convicted. He went to jail for less than 12 hours and then was allowed to go home while he appeals his decision. So this is unfortunately what we see all the time.
Well, I think what's really, in the case you just said as well, very upsetting. I think what's really upsetting about this particular one is my understanding is there are 10 women that have accused this person of sexual assault. This was an online dating situation where this person was meeting people through an online dating app. Which, of course, leaves people vulnerable, Julie. I mean, we could have a whole conversation about that. But then my understanding is that, this case has sort of gone through the community, but the community doesn't know that he is out there. I mean, he could potentially even be on an online app. I don't know what his restrictions are, and meeting other women. This is what I can't get my mind wrapped around.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we don't know the conditions that have been placed upon him, but even in those cases, there are certainly ways to get around those convictions. But yeah, whenever we hear about these stories, it sends a shockwave through the community. I mean, there's another case going through the city right now where someone had presumably consensual sex with women, but didn't tell them that he was filming them and then putting them on pornographic websites. And the second I posted that story on Twitter, numerous women I know who are on dating apps messaged me to say, I instantly panicked and had to look this guy up and see if I had matched with him or if I had gone on a date with this guy. Like, you just don't know, right? And until that story hit the news, women are like, this could have been someone I hooked up with. He could have filmed me and I wouldn't have known. Like, women have the right to be informed about what is happening in our community and who is harming us or who is at risk of harming us based on past behavior.
So whose job is it, Julie, to inform us of these things in your mind?
Well, I think police put out warnings about things all the time. So why can't that be part of it? But I think our discussion today is exactly what should be happening. Like, if the system isn't going to inform us, if the system isn't going to keep us safe, then we need to keep us safe. And that includes just letting people know, informing them. And women have been doing that informally for generations. It's honestly how, it's really the crux of Me Too is women trying to warn each other. And people call it the whisper network, but often it's the only thing we have.
Well, Julie, I mean, I've shared this story, but not to the extent I'm going to now. Is in 1997, I was working at Nepean City Hall, and I was working very, very late at night. And when I came out of my office and I was putting my boots on, there was and I didn't realize it at the time, but it was a former classmate of mine that was standing there completely naked. And it was a sexual assault. And so I won't go into many more details, but basically, I froze. I mean, I think you flee or you freeze. I froze. Gave him a bit of an opportunity to run, and he ended up being caught a number of weeks later after sort of going through the process with police. And I think from my perspective, when I learned that was a former classmate of mine who has actually passed away, he passed away in the last 6 months, that was devastating for me to know that. But then we went through the trial, and the trial was a whole other thing that I could talk about for a day and a half. But anyway, we went through the trial, and he was convicted, and he was put into jail, obviously. When he came out of jail, and I found out through police about 18 months later that he had committed another crime. He had stalked a young woman in a hotel where the employees change, in a hotel change room, and he had sexually assaulted her as well. That absolutely killed me to know that what I had gone through, someone else had gone through, and she'd gone through it worse than I. So I think from when I read this, that it just sparked something in me, because we didn't have social media back in 1997, right, Julie? So it sparked something in me to share this today, because I think often these stories, we hear about them. We're going to be hearing about another one about a teacher at St. Matt's from Gary Dimmick in a few minutes. We hear about these stories and then they sort of go away. But the reality is they could be living next door. They could be on your dating app. They could be, somewhere in your community getting a coffee at your local Tim Hortons, right? Hitting on people. So this is one of the reasons I want to bring this up today. It's very personal for me, but at the same time, I wanted to make sure that we brought this up today and shared and put a bit of sunshine on it today.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry that happened to you, and I'm so sorry that it's, like you said, happening to so many of us. It's not just you and me. It's in Canada, it's 1 in 3 women will be sexually assaulted in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. That's most of us directly impacted. But when you think of the ripple effects that it has on our loved ones, it's every single one of us are impacted by this violence, and we have to name it for what it is. And that's why I'm so appreciative of you taking the time to have this conversation today. I know it's uncomfortable for people, but what's the alternative? Mm-hmm.
Well, what is the alternative, right? Because, now I've got she's going to be 15 soon. I have a daughter who's going to be out there. And, it just to your point, it's cyclical, right? These things are cyclical. And it's a conversation you and I have had, Julie, as women. But I think the more men we bring into this conversation to speak up and hold each other accountable, that's also a conversation that needs to be had in this city.
Absolutely. And I just want to leave folks with the hope that, yes, 1 in 3 women will be sexually assaulted in this country, but we're also the birthplace of the White Ribbon Campaign, which is the world's biggest movement to engage men to end violence against women. And so that's also who we are. And if we identified with that, then we would feel motivated to change things.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate your time always. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. Julie
Lalonde spending time with us today, women's right advocate, talking about that sexual assault case. And that is the reality. There's a lot of these cases that are being done. People are not, being convicted, but they're moving right back into the community. So please be aware. Please be aware on those online apps, and please take care of yourself when meeting new people. There's just too many stories that we're hearing in the capital. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Asselin, and I'm with the Commotions. We are performing Encore Ottawa 3 this week. Be sure to tune in.
It isn't the heavy trays that make the job difficult, or the fast pace you need to keep up. It's not working another double because someone called in sick. What makes the job tough is the moment you realize a customer has had enough, and you have to make that decision not to overserve. Refusing service isn't personal, it's the law. We know it's not easy, but we're counting on you to keep us all safe. Thank you, servers, for doing the tough job.
I'm Julian Armour from Music and Beyond. Join us for a new show this spring on Rogers called Music and Beyond Presents.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa. Ottawa.
And CJET 101.1 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, November 22nd. Good morning. I'm Pirushka Gopal-Kista. Right now in Ottawa, mainly sunny, -4. In Smiths Falls, it's -2. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Trustees at Ottawa's largest school board are set to debate bringing back mask mandates in the classrooms once again. City News reporter Chris Curries with the details.
A new report finds that fewer than 10% of students are wearing masks, while for staff that number is closer to 15-20%. But it could be 100 tomorrow. Trustees will discuss whether to make it mandatory at a board meeting tonight. Ottawa Carleton District School Board trustee Donna Blackburn says a mandate simply cannot be enforced by the school board. But trustee Neely Kaplan-Mirth, who brought forward the motion, disagrees.
So she's just patently wrong. And with all due respect, we've already been advised by the Director of Education that the external legal opinion is that we do have the authority.
The motion points to a recent rise in RSV, influenza, and COVID that has CHEO struggling. The board will meet at 6:30 and receive a legal opinion in camera. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time, 11:01. Now taking a look at your weather, here's City News meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, are you sick of this winter-like weather? We do have some milder air on the way, but it'll take until the end of the week and for the weekend to get here. Guaranteed high today, +1, increasing clouds, some flurries at times tonight. Tomorrow, mainly cloudy, the high near 3, and Thursday, mainly cloudy. There is a possibility, though, of freezing rain overnight Thursday to Friday morning. Will climb to 5 degrees, though, Friday. For today, the guaranteed high, +1.
Right now, mainly sunny in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's -2. The inquiry into the Emergencies Act is hearing from the federal public safety minister as it continues into the final week of witness testimony. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney joins us with the details.
Before the convoy even arrived, Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino says he was receiving briefings from the RCMP and that there were serious concerns about potential violence and the threats being made to politicians, including the Prime Minister. Mendicino also weighed in on the jurisdiction dispute of whether the RCMP or the Ottawa Police should have been clearing out the protest. He notes Wellington Street is the responsibility of the Ottawa Police.
These are federal democratic institutions, but we did not have total jurisdiction over that space. In other words, it wasn't at the sole or exclusive discretion of the RCMP, which is the federal police service, to go and assert itself on Wellington Street to bring the situation back into control.
After Mendicino, we'll hear from Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc. Later this week, on Friday, we'll hear from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
With the holidays creeping up, many of us would be finalizing our travel plans, but this year, not so much. Here's City's Logan Stein with the reaction from a travel expert.
It's looking like another year in which many Canadians are changing their holiday plans.
There are going to be some aspects of this that's going to really make Canadians to cancel or reconsider their upcoming trips.
This is according to Omar Kwan, a travel expert and surveyor. He says much like the last few years, a lot of Canadians are taking steps to save some money over the holiday season by choosing the cheapest destination available.
People are going for shorter time. So if you were planning on going for 2 weeks, now people are considering a 1 week trip. So they can make sure that they're saving and they're not spending as much.
Kwan also sells travel insurance, and he tells me he is seeing a huge increase in people inquiring about insurance amidst a lot of uncertainty surrounding flying and cancellations. Logan Stein, City News.
And Stats Canada says retail sales fell 0.5% in September with a $61.1 billion in sales across the country. StatsCan says a drop in sales at gas stations led to the decrease, along with food and beverage stores. Now, however, the agency says its initial estimate for October pointed to a gain of 1.5% for the month, though it cautioned that that figure would be revised. I'm Pirushka Gopal-Kista. For more local news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, I'll take you back to December 15th of 2017. There was a grisly discovery at 50 Old Colony Road. And it was the bodies of Honey and Barry Sherman. And this story has just got stranger and stranger as the years have gone on. It has remained unsolved. Kevin Donovan from the Toronto Star has not stopped. He has covered this minute by minute, and we are getting caught up with him today. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, good morning.
Kevin, it's a pleasure. I really appreciate you coming on with us. Even though this tragedy took place in Toronto, I think a lot of people here in the Ottawa area are interested in this because it is such a strange case, unsolved. We know that Barry and Honey Sherman were billionaires. They certainly had lots of business dealings, a lot of legal wranglings and that type of thing with different people, and they've got children and lots of different sort of aspects to this story. But it just seems to maybe summarize for people that don't know about it, seems to be botched from the beginning, Kevin.
Yes, and I might add, often Barry was in courts in Ottawa fighting patent litigation. The case starts in 2017 with the discovery of the bodies, and it's a mystery. The first thing that comes out is that this feeling that it's a murder-suicide. The police, for the first 6 weeks, pursue the notion that Barry, billionaire, 75-year-old guy, not in the best of shape, has murdered his wife and then taken his own life. And from there, we look at a series of problems in the case that I've documented in the Star.
And, when I think about the police work that was done, I know you've seen the autopsy photos and the crime scene photos. Is that correct?
That's right.
And so from your perspective, even, I remember you saying to me maybe 6 months ago or something, Sam, even myself, I knew right away that wasn't what it was.
Yeah, when you see the photos, you're seeing what the people who discover the bodies see. And the real estate agent, for example, when she calls the police, says, somebody has killed my client. And when you look at them, the way they're in a seated position, there are belts around their necks that hold them up, but there's no weight on the front of the neck where somebody, where a strangulation would take place. The weight is really on the back. The belts are just holding them upright, and they're actually tilted back at the waist. Yeah, it doesn't look to me and to others, certainly the retired homicide investigators hired by the family, who looked at the photos, were there for the second autopsy. This is a double murder.
Mm-hmm. And we know, despite of living in this mansion and having all of this money, there wasn't a lot of security footage. We know we saw footage of, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's Walking Man, correct? Is that what it was being dubbed?
That's right. And we don't hear about this mysterious walking man who the police say is the killer. We don't hear about him until just last year, into 4 years into the case. The police are aware that there's this person walking in the area. They believe that person entered the Sherman home and was at least one of the killers, or maybe a lookout. They know about that person, but they don't do anything other than try and find him using complicated cellular tracking techniques. And then finally, in what I would dub as a Hey Martha, 4 years into the case, they put out the images of this man walking near the Sherman home during the time of the murders. Mm-hmm. And as far as others, there's very little security footage in the Sherman area, and I'm talking about ring cameras, home cameras. The Shermans have no cameras. There is a camera, two of them actually, at the house across the road, and the police are even quite tardy in collecting that. So, as you pointed out, mistakes all along.
Mm-hmm. And we've just heard of a new one, Kevin, or maybe it's new to me. I saw you reporting on it. Walk me through this one about Pearson.
Part of the process that I'm involved in with the police is I'm allowed every 6 months in court to cross-examine the sole full-time detective on the case, and I'm gradually getting more documents unsealed. These are police documents related to the case, and so one of the things that came up is I said, you're telling me about all this great canvas you did, how you looked at collected video from everywhere. And I said, you've told me that it's, this is in a courtroom. I said, you've told me, Detective, that this is an international investigation. You believe that there's information overseas. Did you check Pearson cameras? And they did not. So they did a lot of things, but they did, I think, in my opinion, the wrong things at the start of the investigation, and now they're playing catch up.
It is just bizarre to me because this seems, I mean, anybody, and I'm not trying to be cheeky or anything, but anybody that's ever watched a crime show can tell you that those are the steps that you take, right?
Yes, and I don't think it's being cheeky at all. And in fact, I often, like many people, do watch procedural detective crime shows, and that's a lot of the fiction that I read. And you always see at the start of one of these cases, let's talk about Law and Order, two detectives show up, they look at the crime scene, and then you go to commercial break. The lead detective in the Sherman case doesn't even go to the Sherman home on the Friday when the bodies are discovered, nor does she go Saturday, Sunday. She goes on Monday, long after the crime scene is being processed. Just another one of these mistakes. And the police say, well, the junior officer went and that's fine, but I don't think that's fine.
Well, I got to tell you, if that was my parents that had been murdered and the lead detective couldn't make it to their house for 72 hours, I'd be some upset.
Yeah, and in fact, the Sherman children who do gather that Friday night at the home of one of the siblings says that the detective who does show up there wouldn't even take his coat off and sit down and talk to them, just was very cursory with them. So just a whole lot of mistakes. And what I've learned is that the Toronto police don't have a system to look at how they investigate a case to try and see if they've met best practices, and if not, how to improve. They don't have that. So I guess that's what I'm doing as a member of the media.
So you've written a book about the billionaire murders, and I'm curious, I mean, you wrote it a couple of years ago. How many more chapters do you think you're going to write about this book? I mean, you could probably do a whole other book, Kevin.
Yes, I mean, in the event that there is a solution, the police lay charge, I would definitely do an update to the book. I'm still continuing to do investigations for the Star. I have a big story coming out timed with the 5-year anniversary in December. The story's not done yet, and I think what is compelling me forward in this is simply that it is it's a whodunit, and there's a lot of errors that were made, and hopefully through our reporting we can shed some light on those and improve it for the next case.
I'm going to be honest with you, Kevin. I've often wondered about this case. Had you not been so tenacious, I don't know where this case would be today.
Well, thank you for saying that. I think the thing that I look back on, I get involved 3 weeks into, 3 weeks after the bodies are discovered, and that's when the police sources are telling all the media that it's a murder-suicide. And I, through my sources, actually get the results of the private autopsy done on the Shermans, which says it's a double murder. And I write a front-page story in January of 2018, and that's the first that the police have heard of the results. And I'm confused as to why the Sherman family didn't pass this on to the police. It shouldn't take, us in the media telling police, but in this case it did.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. And obviously, like you mentioned, you've got some reporting coming out for that milestone of 5 years. Hard to believe it's been 5 years. To be honest, it feels like just yesterday. Because when I'm not here at City News, my other world is in the fundraising world. So, the Sherman family was certainly on my radar from a philanthropic perspective. They were very philanthropic. And there's just so many twists and turns to this story. I keep coming back to you because, even the day we found out that Honey didn't have a will, for instance, that seemed very odd to me that, a billionaire couple wouldn't have a will. I don't have $5 and I have a will. You know what I mean? There's just so many twists and turns to this.
Yeah, that's correct. And there is a report that I did a couple of years ago where I interviewed somebody, and I've talked to that person actually quite recently, and that person stands by the story that in the weeks leading up to the murder, Honey was talking about how she had just updated her will, but where's the will? Is this some document that is in some lawyer's office and nobody's come forward with it? I don't know, just one of the many mysteries in the Sherman case.
For sure. Let's stay in touch, Kevin. I really appreciate you spending time with us on City News.
Thanks for having me on.
Kevin Donovan joining us from the Toronto Star, and the book is fascinating from Kevin. I've read it. My mom read it. It's called The Billionaire Murders, The Murders of Honey and Barry Sherman. When we come back, we're going to talk about masking. We're also going to speak with Gary Dimmick from the Ottawa Citizen. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Hi, my name's Ange. I'm from the Angelina Hunter Trio. We will be performing this week as part of Encore Ottawa 3, and we really hope that you enjoy our set.
Should never have agreed to this last race. She's too old. Ready? Johnson, hang it, Mac! Get to it, Mac!
Here's there's some kind of difficulty.
Seems to be something loose up there, I believe. The console's foul!
Just once more, little girl, and you can rest.
Her last race and still undefeated, the Blue Nose out of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia was fastest in the world for almost 20 years.
Bipolar disorder.
Substance addiction. Bulimia. OCD. Want to swap?
1 in 2. A flip of a coin. That's the same chance we'll experience a mental illness by the time we're 40. $1 a day can help change those odds.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Okay, so there's lots of different opinions about masks in school. We know that that's going to be heard tonight at the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. Those different perspectives are going to be heard, but I want to know the legal side of this. So I'm going to Ari Goldkind, of course, criminal defense lawyer. How are you, Ari?
Great to be on with you.
Thank you so much. Let's talk a little bit about masks. We know that tonight, as I mentioned, that school board is going to be debating this. But do they have anything to debate at the end of the day? Is this legal?
It's a very interesting question, and usually I can give a much more black and white kind of answer. I think there's some color here. First of all, you have a situation where this has become a very polarized issue, including the person putting this forward. One of the more polarizing trustees, I think, in recent history. So you're probably going to see a lot of pushback given the personalities involved. People ask the question of it's legal. It really comes down to what human beings say it is. Now, they say, those in favor of the mandate, that they have a lawyer's letter, a legal opinion that says they can. When asked to show that letter, they say, no, solicitor-client privilege, we won't do it, sort of like the Emergencies Act and the letter that came up yesterday with CSIS. I'm not so sure it's legal if it was challenged in court. In other words, that it's done by a local school board versus the Ministry of Health or the provincial government. I'm not so sure of it. But I'm also not sure that it's not. And at the end of the day, if a school board thinks this is the right way to go to protect students, not comparing it to a dress code, it's obviously more drastic, then I'm not sure they can't do it. The other interesting part of this becomes questions of enforcement, which is if a young child doesn't have a mask on, what do they do with that child? Because as you well know, we live in a world where everybody now gets a gold star for participation. If you go after kids that are misbehaving or attack teachers, you have to worry about virtue signaling and all sorts of other identity politics. So those are the sort of issues around this that make it a much more open question than those saying it's absolutely legal or it's illegal. I'm not so sure there's such an easy answer.
Well, and the flip side of it is I had the Director of Education on, Tom D'Amico, from the Ottawa Catholic School Board. They're not pursuing this type of mask mandate, and he sort of explained it in a very simple way to me yesterday. And this is not even a legal level, but even from, the perspective of they've got 47,000 students. So let's just say 20% of them don't comply. Well, how are you going to manage? How are you going to manage all that? And then you have 5,000 staff. Let's say you don't have 20% compliance there. Where are you finding another 1,000 teachers?
I think that you've hit the nail right on the head, and that person you mentioned hits the nail right on the head. This is a purely political issue. Again, you cannot separate this issue out from two things. One, the fact that the virus is really prevalent now with young children. There really is a problem in pediatric emergency.
Oh, have we lost you, Ari? Oh, I think we might have lost Ari. My producer's going to get Ari Goldkind back on the line there. It really is a very interesting debate. And I saw Donna Blackburn this morning at the Big Brother, Big Sister of Ottawa fundraising breakfast, and she was talking about this meeting tonight. She expects it to go late into the night. There are a lot of different perspectives on that. The very first sort of real meeting of this trustee group is going to include Dr. Nili Kaplan-Murth, and it's going to be one of her very first meetings, and she certainly has a perspective on this, two opposing perspectives with those two trustees. Ari, sorry, we lost you there for a second.
Yeah, no problem. And I just heard that as we were coming back. You mentioned who I'm talking about. And going back to the question, that person, as I said, is as polarizing as the day is long. The question becomes, what do you do with the 20 or 30 or 40% of kids that won't be wearing a mask? And again, they're going to have all these exceptions, like when you're eating or when you're playing a musical instrument and all these other things. It's sort of like, when we saw through COVID and the mandates on the planes, where people had them half up or as long as you're eating a sandwich, COVID stops. So much of this is political. You cannot extricate it out. But what I really don't like is the idea that you're going to be sending a message to young kids that somehow they're doing something wrong, whether they're masked or not, because they're now going to be the guinea pigs, for lack of a better term, for these adult issues that have become highly, highly politicized. And one other way of looking at this is the reason we're in this problem, and I don't pretend that I'm a scientist, I'm just a lowly lawyer and political commentator, but one of the reasons we're in this situation is because for 2 to 2.5 years, kids have been masked. Their immune systems are shot. They're not developed. You're going to see allergies and asthma spike through the roof because kids haven't had the normal lives and exposure to dirt and allergens that they've had in the normal world. So the longer you keep kids in masks, and I'm not saying the mask mandate should or shouldn't go. That's not the point. But the longer that you keep kids masked, the longer you're going to ensure that immune systems don't develop properly, and we're going to have this problem 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the road. The fact that there's a problem in hospitals, to me, is a big part of this, but kicking a problem or kicking the proverbial can down the road never seems to me to be an appropriate solution.
And here's what's going to be challenging, is that parents had to make that decision, right? To put a mask on little Johnny or little Susie so that they kept their grandparents safe, right? I mean, this is you go back to the days of March 2020 where the masks weren't being worn. I don't think we started wearing them till June or July. I'm happy to be corrected on that. But you think about, we weren't seeing, I was dropping groceries off to my mom and running back to the car, petrified I was going to get her sick. I mean, that's the kind of world that we're coming from.
And that's a very fair point. And here's the point that I think, again, you can't take away the politics out. You have the person whose name you mentioned before that, again, I don't think you can separate that personality out of this issue. It's her motion. She's behind it. Whether you support that or not, different segment. But when you have the province's top doctor, the mayor of Toronto, and all of these 50 fancy people at a big party last week, the day that they're saying everybody should wear a mask indoors, but all these influential, wealthy, successful people are all partying inside without masks on the day they literally say the rest of you should be wearing a mask, you're just really running the risk of ruining trust in public institutions and wondering if this is truly about power, ideology, and politics versus the clear and unequivocal protection of the public. And that is a debate that is not going to be solved at the Ottawa School Board. I think it's going to make enemies into friends and friends into enemies.
Well, you can ask Boris Johnson how that worked out for him.
That's a very fair point. And look at how bad the new guy is. If you looked at his video with our current Prime Minister, laughable. But that's, again, I digress.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate the conversation, Ari. Thank you so much for spending time with us on City News.
Great to be on with you.
Harry Goldkind spending time with us today. Criminal defense lawyer talking about masks. That big meeting happening tonight with the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. We'll be following this story very closely. You will want to be here. The first at 5, of course, with Andrew Boyle. He'll be able to get you all caught up. And then you will definitely want to tune in to Wake Up with Rob Snow tomorrow. And then, of course, the Talk Back Hour with David Smith. We're going to be covering this story all day long and all night long. You'll want to stay with us. When we come back, Gary Dimmick is going to join us. He writes for the Ottawa Citizen. He is an incredibly talented writer. He goes to the places, the dark places, that some of us don't want to go. And the reason he goes there is because he wants to share stories like we're going to hear after this news break. Do not go anywhere. Stay with us here on Rogers TV and City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This week on Simply Cooking by Chef, simple salads that will last all week in the fridge, give you a burst of flavor, and will please a big crowd.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
After a night out with your friends, there's always options for getting home safely. You could call your BFF, your mom or dad, whoever you can count on for a safe ride home. You could call your favorite cab company or 1-888 taxi guy. Or you could use the Arrive Alive smartphone app to help you choose your ride. Be it a friend, transit, or taxi, getting home safely is app easy. Now available for iOS and Android devices. Visit arrivealive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
Once upon a time, in a nursery rhyme, there were 3 bears. 1, 2, 3 bears. And they went a-walking in the cool woods a-talk.
Rogers TV invites you to let your imagination roam as we present Ottawa Storytellers. Each week, we'll present a collection of original creative stories and inspirations for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers on Rogers TV.
Let me kiss Hi everybody, my name is Brian Aslan and I'm with the Commotions. We are performing Encore Ottawa 3 this week. Be sure to tune in.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, November 22nd. Good morning, I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. Right now in Ottawa, mainly sunny, -3. In Smith Falls, it's -1. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. King Charles III has welcomed South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to London for the first state visit of his reign. The visit was organized before the death of Queen Elizabeth II, a nod to her long-time devotion to the Commonwealth. Here at home, Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino says the federal cabinet ministers were worried about their personal safety from the outset of the Freedom Convoy protests because some of the demonstrators had posted online about targeting their homes. Mendicino is one of the 7 cabinet ministers slated to testify at the public inquiry into the government's use of the Emergencies Act. Now, some documents show that the RCMP were aware of protesters that were trying to gather the home addresses of MPs, including the Prime Minister. Protesters arrived in Ottawa nearly 2 days later and parked hundreds of vehicles to block city streets for weeks. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau declared the public order emergency on February 14th. And Ottawa's new mayor will be at Queen's Park for meetings with the Premier and the Housing Minister. Mark Sutcliffe says there are a number of issues he has to discuss, including the provincial cash that the city spent on the May long weekend storm cleanup, as well as OC Transpo's $85 million deficit. The controversial Bill 23 is also one of the topics for discussion. City News Time, 11:31. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, some of the toughest stories in this city to cover. You find Gary Dimmick there covering it for us, and we appreciate it very much. He reports for the Ottawa Citizen and for all of us here in the National Capital Region, and he joins me now. Hi, Gary.
Oh, hey, Sam.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today on City News.
Oh, my pleasure. Anything for you, Sam.
You're very kind. So when I think back to our days at St. Matt's, you and I are both, St. Matt's people that went there, and I didn't graduate from there, but I certainly am a proud St. Pat's alumni. I spent 3 years there. I was really disheartened a number of years ago to hear about the disgraced teacher that has certainly caused a lot of harm to a number of his female students. You have been following this story very closely, Gary. There are some developments. Bring us up to speed.
Yeah, so he's on trial now off and on. To go back to St. Matthew's, though, back to, you brought it up, our days, alleged sex abuse in the school setting is nothing new. As a matter of fact, there's one teacher that I would have had at St. Matthew's back in, I think it was grade 7 or 8, believe it or not. It was a long time ago. He's actually still in prison. Like, I can't say his name because there's a publication ban on his name. But it just seems like, you can write about sex abuse at the school setting for over 30 years, and it keeps popping up. And it's truly disturbing all around. In Rick DePatty's case, he's not been convicted of anything. It was 2021. The charges were publicized, and there were four complainants, all young girls at the time between the ages of 12 and 13. Just recounting some truly disturbing stuff from the accused, who was in a complete position of trust and power as a teacher. He's a longtime basketball coach and a math teacher. The girls, it was always girls thing in common with their ages. They were in his class. and wearing the uniform skirts. Nothing's been proved in court, and they've all testified. We haven't heard from him yet, but some of their accounts are basically, you're looking at ugly, unwanted advances, that made them scared, groping breasts, thighs. One girl testified that he squeezed her neck so hard it was difficult to talk. Other girls testified about this game that he would play, if you could call it that, lack of a better word, where he would drop pens around girls that had uniform skirts on and try to look up their skirts. One of the girls testified about private detentions. Like that's new for me. I'd never heard of private detentions for not doing homework. And then once he held her in the classroom in the morning before school and at lunch, and sometimes the girl was alone. And when she went to these private detentions, only to be molested again by DePatty. That's her account. Her account under oath account she gave court. In her own words, she said she was afraid. And so, you've got these 4 accounts. They're all truly, I would use the word horrifying. And we're waiting to see if DePatty's going to take the stand like the girls did. And he doesn't have to take the stand. The onus is on the crown to prove their case, obviously, as you know. But, basically you're looking at the allegations, unwanted touching, creepy attempts at footsies. Some of this was happening, according to the girls, again, their accounts, in the classroom, after the classroom, before classroom. It essentially just seemed to just keep happening. Some of the girls testified too that this happened in front of other people. And remember one girl, she said she told her class. That's right. She told her class. She told a friend after class. She had told about it for the first time, and her friend said that it had happened to her as well. And she said, quote, "I just got used to it." Then the girl said, "Wait a minute, I don't think that, you should ever have to get used to anything like that, of all things, aside from the story, and they also said that stuff happened in gym class as well, and he was staring at the girls' chests and other places. Aside from the court case, I asked this of a teacher that I know the other day, and they said they didn't know the answer. I'd be most curious to see what the teachers are talking to, if they're talking at all about this case at St. Matthew's and other high schools, because I've always found when you don't talk about it, it just festers. Right? Lives in the dark, and the dark place seems to get bigger and bigger and more horrific as the years go on. College of Teachers, the Ontario College of Teachers, they said a year ago that they were investigating and how the complaints were handled and why DePatty was allowed to continue teaching. The school board, I think they also said something as well, but the reality is that neither one of those bodies has announced their findings, and I would be extremely surprised if they ever made their findings public, which is the right thing to do, in my opinion. So this doesn't continue. And I'm not saying that he's guilty in this case. I'm talking about all of the cases.
Yeah, I understand. One of the quotes that I read from your recent article, Gary, was, that, and I may not get the quote exactly right, but the girls felt so disgusted they were trying to shower to get it off them. And that really hit home for me. That's how physically they were resulting to that.
That was her first year at St. Matthew's Catholic High School, and it was after what she detailed as all these unwanted, ugly advances that she'd just go home and scrub away in the shower until her skin turned bright red. Those are her words, and she also said, "I felt so dirty," and so it's. All in all, it's about 14 charges of sex crimes involving 4 girls aged 12 to 13. But yeah, that's not a scene that you like to write about. But if you don't write about it, then nobody's going to talk about it. didn't write about it, we wouldn't be on the radio talking about it.
Well, and that's the thing, and that's why, that's why I really respect the stuff you do, Gary. You do cover some of the most horrific cases the city has ever seen, and we've spoke about a number of them over the years. But this particular case, I think, especially because you and I both went to St. Matt's, that's where we met, and I have a lot of fond memories about there. This just was such a scar on that school, which I love so much, and it really is. It really is sad. You have spent lots of times in courtrooms covering stories like this. What is the next step from your perspective? Where do we see this case go now?
You'll see it resume January the 12th. I think it's a Thursday, probably at around 9 or 10. I think right now that it's been off and on for quite a while this year. So there's another court date in January. That could be to decide on an application, a legal application, a motion. Pretty dry but important legally, and then we'll see. The Crown has wrapped up its case, so then we'll see if the defense calls any witnesses, any evidence at all, and we'll see if DePatie takes the stand as well. Right.
Mm-hmm. I just feel for those young girls having to share those memories.
Yeah, and on the other side, his defense lawyers, he's got two of them. They amount all of these allegations to nothing but Mr. DePatie being caught up in what they called a middle school myth house of rumor, and that everybody had called him nicknames like pedophile and whatnot, and that some of the girls, they were just stressed or not doing well in his class, and that's how they're trying to mitigate all of this. I don't know what's going to happen in court, but it's interesting that none of the girls. It should be noted, actually, for your listeners, is that none of the girls that took the stand or testified, they weren't in the same class. These are different years, right?
That's such an important point, Gary, because of what you indicated regarding the defense, right? I mean, it's not like 3 or 4 girls got together and said, "Oh, we're going to take down a teacher we don't like."
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. We'll see what happens in court, but just the idea of it, that it was one thing that stuck with me is that one of the girls said, that she asked to switch out of the class, and said, that there was a problem doing so. And I don't know, I don't know where the truth lies in everybody's stories, but you've got 4 stories that have some very, very common traits. He's no longer working at the school, by the way.
So it's so interesting you say that, because I just had Julie Loned on talking about a sexual assault case, because that gentleman, well, I said gentleman, that's the wrong word. That person is out and roaming the streets, and although they've been convicted, they're still, they haven't been sentenced yet. So that's a really good point you bring up today. So is he behind bars, or is he living in our community?
He's on bail. He's on bail conditions right now, living with what's called a surety, basically someone who posts as a bond. I don't know if there was any cash exchange, but if the accused breaks any of their bail conditions, then they would have to pony up that money. The bail conditions also say that they prohibit him. He's forbidden from contacting the complainants. He's banned from pools and parks or wherever children hang out, really. And he's also banned from working with children, which he's done his entire adult life. He's also banned from volunteering with them as well, or being anywhere around them. The school board, which hasn't announced its findings, said what they say. They said, no student in our care should be subjected to any type of harm, especially when attending their own school, where so many staff work hard to create a safe and caring environment. Unfortunately, and generally speaking, we only hear about these statements after the fact. So it would be really, really cool if you had some good teachers down at St. Matthew's that were open and talking about this specific case in class, no matter how difficult it is. Because if you're a teacher, you're in a position, and education is the foundation for a better imagination. And if you got a kid in high school that is dealing, and if anybody's listening, if anybody has a kid in high school that's dealing with this this vile behavior, then it needs to be talked about, and nothing's going to stop until people start talking about it. And I'm not trying to preach or anything. It's just basic stuff. You're teaching kids, let's teach them everything.
Brilliant, as always.
Good and the bad.
Gary, I really appreciate you coming on with me today and sharing about this story. I wish it was better news than this about our old St. Matt's.
One of these days, I'll write a good news story.
I can't wait. You're going to have to come on with me for sure. Thank you so much, Gary. I always appreciate it.
I do mean what I said. And if anybody out there is in a spot and they need to talk to somebody, there's a lot of good police officers out there. There's a lot of good teachers out there. And there's a lot of good parents. You just got to talk, even if it's uncomfortable.
Appreciate that very much. Gary Dimmick joining us, writer and journalist with the Ottawa Citizen. He'll join us again, and I look forward to that. We've just receiving some word here, some breaking news out of the Emergencies Act inquiry. We're discovering here that the convoy lawyer, this is just coming into me now, we're going to be providing more details, but a bit of breaking news for you. The convoy lawyer has just been kicked out of the inquiry, so we're awaiting some details. So you'll want to stay with us here. We have the new news coming up in about 15 minutes. You won't want to go anywhere. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
On Tuesday's Daytime Ottawa, we'll tell you about local artisans, a great place to find some wonderful handmade gift ideas. And the Christmas Smiles campaign is back. This is being put on by W Flowers. We'll tell you how you can get involved and really help put a smile on someone's face over the holiday season. And the month of November is Diabetes Awareness Month. In this particular segment, we're going to talk about prevention. All that and more on Tuesday.
When an impaired driver killed my brother DJ, some people used the A word. They called it an accident, but it wasn't. An accident implies that no one was at fault. But when someone impaired by alcohol and/or drugs chooses to drive, they're fully responsible for the crash that can result. So please, for the memory of my brother DJ and the thousands of families whose lives have been shattered by impaired drivers, let's drop the A word.
A crash caused by impaired driving is not an accident.
After a 2-year hiatus, we are back with brand new episodes of Celebrate Ottawa starting this fall. We showcase remarkable people highlighting the city's diversity in arts, culture, sports, and nature. We will show you features that will entertain you and will even teach you new things. Join me, your host, Lila Grind, as we explore and celebrate Ottawa.
From coast to coast, all across Canada, there's something very special going on. It's time to show your support. Time to spread the word. Time to demonstrate your commitment to safe and sober driving. Join thousands of Canadians and tie a ribbon on something or someone you love. And take the time to have a real conversation about impaired driving. Mad Project Red Ribbon. Tie it, wear it, show it, share it, live it. Find out more at mad.ca.
Hi, my name's Ange. I'm from the Angelina Hunter Trio. We will be performing this week as part of Encore Ottawa 3, and we really hope that you enjoy our set.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I love looking back at this city and to see how far we've come. And we're going to go back to 1924. And when I go back to 1924, I bring Ben Wise with me from the Historical Society of Ottawa. Hi, Ben.
Good morning, and I do want to clarify, I have not been around since 1924, but I'm happy to tell stories.
Me either, Ben. I realized that's what it was sounding like. But we do like looking back, and we're looking back for a really important reason today, back to 1924, my friend.
Yeah, this weekend marks 98 years since the Ottawa Civic Hospital opened on November 27th, 1924. And I was happy to see that you also posted James Powell's story on this on the City News website and Facebook page yesterday from his excellent Today in Ottawa's History blog. James is such an important part of the Historical Society of Ottawa, and the city is so much richer in their knowledge of our past because of James. It amazes me that this hospital, over a century old, has continued to serve Ottawa's needs all these decades, getting us through COVID these last 3 years on top of everything else. There's been quite a bit of talk lately about hospitals over capacity and lots of conversation about the new campus that's finally being built for the Civic. So I thought I might talk about the events that led to the decision to build this original Civic almost 100 years ago.
Yes, please do.
So over the last few weeks, we've talked about some of Ottawa's remarkable mayors. One mayor we haven't mentioned yet has a statue on the lawn in front of the Civic Hospital, and he'll forever be associated with the founding of the Civic. It's a statue of Harold Fisher, and the inscription makes reference to Fisher's Folly. Fisher's Folly is what some newspapers called this mayor's ambitious plan to build the Civic Hospital. But the inscription goes ahead to read, "If you would see his monument, look around you." And it's true, we owe so much to Harold Fisher. He was mayor only from 1917 to 1920, really a pretty short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
You and I know that Jim Watson will never forget having to deal with this devastating COVID pandemic that we've had this past while during his time as mayor. And I can only imagine the great weight of responsibility any mayor feels for all the citizens of his or her city during a crisis like this. For Harold Fisher back in 1918, it was the deadly Spanish flu that had swept through Ottawa while he was mayor. In recent weeks, I've talked about the fact that the wave of Spanish flu that gripped Ottawa in the fall of 1918 had petered out just as the war came to an end. And November 11th was not just only a celebration of the end of the World War, but also coincidentally the day that restrictions had been put into place to deal with the flu had been scheduled to be lifted. I mentioned that the Spanish flu, coming at the tail end of the war, ended up killing even more people than the war did. Millions died around the world. As much as 6% of the world's population died from the so-called Spanish flu.
Wow.
50,000 Canadians, and despite extraordinary precautions put into place, 1 out of 200 Ottawa residents is estimated to have died during just the 6-week peak period. Mayor Fisher had closed schools, churches, theaters. People were made to wear masks. Stores closed early. Streetcars were sanitized over and over again. But still, up to 50 people a day were dying in Ottawa during the worst of it. So what was clear to Mayor Harold Fisher and everyone else is that Ottawa just didn't have the hospital capacity to deal with a pandemic of this kind. University of Ottawa residences, Lansdowne Park, and schools were all converted to temporary hospital spaces, but it just wasn't enough. So it became Harold Fisher's mission in life, even after he was out of the mayor's chair, to make sure that Ottawa would never be caught off guard again. So he made it his mission to make sure that today's Civic Hospital would be built. Now, people must have thought the location he picked way out on Carling Avenue was crazy. The city was tiny back then.
Right.
And the Civic Hospital was being built in what was then far out in the countryside. So you can understand why some people called it Fisher's Folly, but they were proved wrong. The Civic Hospital, as you know, Sam, has ended up serving as the backbone of our city's health delivery system for over a century. Interesting thing is that the Civic Hospital was not the first time that a tragic lack of capacity during a health crisis had prompted the building of a new hospital after the fact. When the Civic Hospital opened in 1924, it replaced the much smaller Carleton County Protestant Hospital on Rideau Street, along with St. Luke's on Frank Street and a couple of other smaller institutions. The Carleton County Protestant Hospital, today's Wallace House, was built in 1873, and it was built in response to scourges of typhoid, cholera, smallpox, and typhus that had swept through town. That 75-bed hospital, in turn, had replaced an even smaller 100-bed version of itself, which had been built by the Protestants in 1851, following that terrible 1847 typhus epidemic that we all know that Elizabeth Briere and the Grey Nuns had famously built a hospital for and tend to the Irish famine refugees. And now, a century later, here we are building a brand new civic hospital across the road by Dow's Lake after the COVID-19 pandemic once again pushed our existing capacities to the limit.
Wow. History repeating itself, Ben.
It is. And to me, again, it's hard to believe that the Civic built a century ago has been able to service as well as it has. A Dutch princess was born there.
Right.
Our current prime minister was born there. I was born there.
Wow.
And so was one of my daughters.
It's
The
amazing.
Civic boasts, sorry?
I was just going to say it's amazing because earlier today I had Tim Kluk on, who is the Ottawa Hospital Foundation president and CEO, talking about another family that stepped up, the Mirans family, with $1 million gift, and it really does take a community to pull a hospital together, and all this is so fascinating what you're sharing.
Absolutely. And look at the hospitals we have in our city today. The Civic boasts a world-class heart institute. In the 1940s, it was one of the first hospitals to provide blood transfusions to civilians and ended up saving possibly dozens of lives the night of the horrific Almont train crash. Going back to that hospital that Elizabeth Briere and the Grey Nuns had built in a hurry back in 1847, that little hospital, of course, evolved into the General Hospital, and that served our city in Lowertown until the 1980s, and now at its modern Smythe Road location. So, of course, these hospitals now combine to be the Ottawa Hospital that serves us. Getting back to Elizabeth Briere, we've been talking about remarkable women from Ottawa's history this past few weeks. Elizabeth Briere certainly counts among the most extraordinary. The images we now see of Mother Briere are usually from later in life, but she was only 27 when she and the Grey Nuns arrived in 1845. They were summoned here to save Bytown, but this was just before the typhus epidemic came through and the Irish family refugees. She was feisty and she fought for what she believed in, and when Bytown needed a hospital in a hurry, Elizabeth Briere made it happen. There's a great new book, actually, that came out this year by Michael McBain, called Bytown 1847, Elizabeth Briere and the Irish famine refugees. So anybody interested in reading more about that, I strongly suggest they look that up. One of the common threads you may have noticed was the division between Protestant and Catholic. Today, of course, that doesn't exist, which is great. So it's going to be interesting to see what's done with the old Civic Hospital when the new one's complete. The old Grace Hospital became a long-term care facility. The Civic Hospital's predecessor, the Carleton County Protestant Hospital on Riva Street, is now beautiful condos known as Wallace House. Are you familiar with Wallace House, Sam?
Yes, I am, actually. Yeah.
It's one of the many buildings restored over the years under the direction of an amazing developer named Sandy Smallwood. If you see a beautiful old building, especially in the Sandy Hill area, it's probably a structure that Sandy and his company Amtrex have had a hand in preserving over the last 50 years.
And it's so wonderful to look back, Ben. I'm sorry we have to wrap up to head to the news, but I love looking back with you. This is one of my favorite parts of the week, and look forward to next week, Ben.
Absolutely, Sam. Talk to you next week.
Thank you, Ben Wise, spending time with us today from the Historical Society of Ottawa, talking about that civic campus, just about celebrating 98 years. And we know that new campus is just around the corner. When we come back, it is Lunch with Sam. We're going to have a great discussion today and feast on those top news topics of the day. We're also going to have the business lunch. Today, Michael Curran, publisher of the Ottawa Business Journal, is going to be joining us. I can't wait. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap. This week on Simply Cooking by Chef, simple salads that will last all week in the fridge, give you a burst of flavor, and will please a big crowd.
The regulars, the guys who keep this place in business. Last week, they had something to celebrate. Jason had just finished university, so they toasted his profs, his TAs, his old roommates. Well, they toasted just about everyone. But I worry about and take care of my guys. So even when I know they're not driving, sometimes that means bringing them a little surprise. And then they had a drink to me.
Brought to you by Smart Serve Ontario and Arrive Alive, Drive Sober.
There we go. Hey, going back in, okay?
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Hi everybody, my name is Brian Aslan and I'm with the Commotions. We are performing Encore Ottawa 3 this week. Be sure to tune in.
City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, November 22nd. Good afternoon. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. Right now in Ottawa, partly cloudy skies, -3. In Smiths Falls, it's -1. Here's what's making news right now. The battle lines have been drawn in the mask mandate discussion. City News reporter Chris Curries with the details.
Trustees with the Ottawa Carleton District School Board will debate this evening bringing back a temporary mask mandate in public schools. Dr. Nili Kaplan-Mirth, who is bringing the motion forward, said currently the low uptake of masks in schools from students and staff is due to peer pressure.
When you go out into an environment where you're the only person who's masking, then you are told, well, you don't really need to mask. It's not required, and there's pressure. There is pressure that comes from whether or not everybody else around you is masked.
The meeting will begin with an in-camera briefing with some legal frameworks. Trustee Donna Blackburn tells me how she thinks it will go.
I suspect it's going to be a very close vote.
She believes it could become a tie, which procedurally would mean the motion fails. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time 12:01. Now let's look at what the weather will be like for the next few days. Here's City News meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, the clouds will take charge as we work through the day. Our guaranteed high +1. We'll get into some flurries at times tonight, -2, and quite a bit of cloud for Wednesday and Thursday. Heads up Thursday night into early Friday. We could be dealing with some freezing rain. It'll change over to rain, though, as we climb to +5 Friday. For today, the guaranteed high +1.
Right now in Ottawa, partly cloudy, -3. In Smiths Falls, it's -1. The Ford government's expanded strong mayor powers was a big topic of discussion during question period today. City's Richard Southern is at Queen's Park with the latest.
The expanded strong mayor's powers will, for example, let Mayor Tory pass a bylaw with just 8 city council seats, a minority. The NDP's Merritt Stiles.
Speaker, why does the Premier think our democratic institutions can be swept aside whenever they're just inconvenient for him?
Premier Ford wasn't in question period today, answering his housing minister Steve Clark, who continued to frame the strong mayor's powers as a way to get housing built.
We need mayors in those 6 regions, along with the mayors of Toronto and Ottawa, to be able to have the tools to get shovels in the ground faster.
They're willing to undermine democracy again, letting just 8 people of 26 pass laws that affect over 3 million people in Toronto.
I'm not going to take any lessons from the New Democrats in terms of housing policy. Nobody's interested in their leadership race. Nobody's interested in their policies.
Queen's Park, Richard Southern, City News.
And great news for Canada as they gear up for their first appearance on the pitch at the World Cup in Qatar tomorrow afternoon. But as for Argentina, not so good news. Here's City's Momin Qureshi with a recap from this morning's match and a look ahead at what games are coming up.
Argentina, one of the perennial favorites. They have arguably the best player of all time, whether it's him, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Lionel Messi, but they ended up losing their first match to Saudi Arabia 2-1. Saudi Arabia scoring 2 goals in the second half to pull off the absolutely stunning victory this morning. Now, there are several other matches on tap today, actually 4 in total. There's already 2 done. Denmark and Tunisia coming to that thrilling 0-0 draw. One more sleep to go until the 36-year wait is over and Canada finally gets back into the World Cup, playing their first match at 2 o'clock tomorrow against Belgium. Today, head coach John Herdman giving some welcome news to Canadian fans that we've been thinking about, which is that Alphonso Davies, the superstar on Canada, is healthy and will play tomorrow. Reporting live, Momin Qureshi, City News.
And I'm Parushka Gopal-Kister. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Connecting you and your community. This is the Sam Laprade Show on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, it's lunchtime. You know what that means. We pull up a seat at the table and invite you to talk about those news stories of the day. And we're doing that today with Julie Bune, Director of Communications, CAA North and East Ontario. Hi, Julie.
Hey, Sam.
Thanks for coming to lunch.
No problem.
And we've invited Cam Holstrom to join us, Principal of Nippewa Strategies. Hi, Cam.
Hello, Sam.
Are you ready for lunch with Julie and I?
I am ready and looking forward to it.
Well, we're hoping you're going to get a word in edgewise, Cam, because when Julie and I get going, we really get going. We're going to start with you, Cam. Let's talk a little bit about the Emergencies Act inquiry. We're seeing all sorts of stuff happening there today. What are you expecting out of this big week?
What do I expect? Not much. What I hope for is going to be some introspection and some good advice about how to avoid what happened last winter. I think that's the key thing is, you know, there was a colossal confluence of mistakes and errors that led us to that situation. And I think that's the best thing that this whole inquiry can bring us is bring us some clarity on what happened and how we can avoid it happening again. And honestly, the thing I'd like to hear come from this is how policing of the parliamentary precinct is done going forward. I think the one thing that's clear from all this, having 4 different police agents or safety agencies from 3 different jurisdictions having jurisdiction in that area created a lot more problems than there needed to be. So I'm hoping to hear one of the things coming out of it being that, look, either the whole parliamentary precinct, the whole downtown, however you want to define it, goes to one force and that they are responsible for it from now on out.
Oh, Cam, we are so aligned on that. That was really something that surprised me, that there wasn't a more of a collaboration, or there wasn't more sort of a joint agreement of how that was going to proceed. Julie, what are you expecting to see out of the Emergencies Act inquiry this week? We know Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will be in the hot seat on Friday. I'm looking forward to hearing from the Prime Minister.
Yeah, 100%. I think, one of the things that I was shocked at was just how chaotic everything was and how it was chaotically handled. I was thinking about bad actors around the world, and we basically lifted the skirts on how there's no communication, and there's miscommunication and misunderstanding and deliberate misunderstanding, all that sort of thing. So I think what it would be really good to know is that there's a line of sight, regardless of what your political leaning is, that there's a line of sight on how we're going to protect the parliamentary precinct and how we're going to handle mass demonstrations, because, we've had this one, and I think going forward there are going to be some other big ones that are going to come. I think we can reasonably expect that, and there should be a playbook that comes of this.
Cam, I don't know if you've been downtown and in front of Parliament Hill recently, but I've really noticed, obviously it's been all segregated during this time since the convoy, but I've really noticed, as I've sort of been downtown in the last number of weeks, what a shame it is that it's all blocked off the way it is. It's not very inviting to come to the Capitol and see in front of Parliament Hill the way it looks right now. It's still remnants of the convoy.
As someone who spent a decade working on the Hill, that's one of the things I used to love about working there, was just that openness, the fact that, you know what, during the summer, you know, one day there's practice for the Canada Day celebration. I remember my office used to be in the West Block for many years. And I would sit in my office one day, I hear bare naked ladies practicing their set for Canada Day, right? Then the next day there's people out doing yoga on the lawn, right? It's like, the accessibility of the place is something I always took as a point of pride, especially when I dealt with fellow colleagues from around the world who worked in parliamentary precincts that were had to be much more secured. But you know what? Even after the shooting that we had in 2014, it was clear that something needed to change. And to me, the idea that, especially right out in front of Parliament, that I think that's where you saw the big fall down. The fact that that the RCMP and the parliamentary police don't control the street directly in front of them is a problem, right? And when you go further away from that, it that problem just compounds. So as much as I cherish that accessibility, they're also we're in a different world now, and that can't just be allowed to happen again. And the thing is too is that I've been a part of many, as an Indigenous person, I've taken part in many protests going up and down Wellington, that have been, coordinated with the police and all of that. I still, to this day, cannot imagine a situation where any other protest group would be allowed to park massive semi-trucks on the middle of Wellington, let alone drive one down to Wellington, let alone keep it there. So again, there are major questions that need to be answered there about just the foresight or lack thereof from Ottawa police. And I think this has just pushed the question out now that, as much as we value having that open space and having to be accessible to car traffic, I think there needs to be a change. Because you know what? There used to be a day when I had people tell me stories how there used to be a day when you could actually drive right up onto Parliament Hill and go up to the Peace Tower and take pictures, right?
I did that, I did it myself as a kid. I remember it like it was yesterday. Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you get out of the Ottawa bubble, and I mean that with the most love, when you travel to other parts of the world, you really do see how others live and what it looks like. When we were in France this past summer, my daughter and I were taking an Uber past, the grounds, and we didn't know it at the time, past the grounds of President Macron's home, and every 5 feet was somebody there with a rifle. Like, it was very, very serious security around Macron's home, for instance. So it really is amazing to think how long we have gone the way we've gone until this past year. Julie, what are your thoughts about what we're seeing right now in front of Wellington and what that looks like? Or on Wellington, I should say.
Well, I live downtown, and of course, all summer, through a blues fest, I was riding my bike back and forth to see shows, and it was sad. It was like this, I don't know, it wasn't the people's place anymore, and to your point, I've been to Washington, and the amount of security around there, especially post-Trump, is mind-boggling. That's not how we're supposed to be in Canada, and it's discouraging that we've been forced into this situation because people legitimately want to protest. That's fine, but we've lost sight of how to do that in a way that's going to reach the most people in the most positive way without disrupting the lives of thousands of people.
For sure. Let's talk a little bit today. We're having lunch together, which is lovely, and we know that our Mayor Mark Sutcliffe is in Toronto today, meeting with our Premier Doug Ford. Maybe they're having lunch together. I don't know. What do you think they're talking about, Cam? What are the top couple of conversations that are going to take place between Ford and Sutcliffe?
Well, I wonder if the Premier is going to be serving our new mayor some of his famous blueberry cheesecake. Let's just start there. A nice little sweet to start off the conversation, because what I'm hoping that the mayor is saying is for the Premier to take his strong mayor powers and place them somewhere where he doesn't need them. I guess polite.
Yeah, very polite way.
I'm hoping that is what he's doing, because I think they actually have some goals that are very simpatico when it comes to more development, when it comes to the economic side of things. But obviously, the strong mayor stuff is not going to fly in Ottawa, and he's made it clear, the Mayor Sutcliffe's made it clear he doesn't want it, and I think he needs to make a show of the fact that he's talking to him and letting him know it. So how the Premier reacts to that, I don't know, but to me, that has to be first and foremost what it is. You know, saying, look, we're on the same page, but you're going about this the wrong way.
Julie, what do you think's top of mind for that conversation today?
Yeah, I'm looking at my computer screen. That was the first thing that I thought of too, was the strong mayor. You know, it goes back to the Ford brothers having a real disdain for Toronto City Council and how it operates, and having an agenda, and that's front and center now. I don't think most cities in Ottawa are interested in this. You know, this is a subversion of the democratic process. Do we need to overhaul, you know, how city councils operate? Probably. You know, we've just had to live with, you know, a councillor who was accused of multiple sexual misconduct over the past little while, and he got to sit there in council and collect whatever. And you know, I think we do need to look at things like that. But this is wrong-headed and you know, and strong-armed, to use two really overused analogies.
For sure, and I agree with both of you. I also hope that he, you know, comes home with some sort of resolution on the monies that owed both the city and Hydro in terms of the storm that struck us over the May long weekend. I think there's a really long period of time for us to get paid for some of those costs, and I think the province is certainly dragging their feet a bit. So I hope that's top of mind for them as well. When we come back on lunch, are you two ready for what we're going to talk about?
Oh yeah,
we're going to talk about masks. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
Behold Emily Carr, painter, about to encounter the force that will consume her life.
Tightly they sealed their secrets from me, humble and pleading before the great trees, awaiting the invitation from the Spirit to come meet me halfway. Nothing is still now, everything is alive. At last, I knew I must see through the eye of the totem itself, the mythic eye of the forest.
Seldom able to live by her brush, before she died in 1945, Emily Carr was in the first rank of Canadian painters.
This is my country. What I want to express is here, and I love it. Amen.
What is it?
Anxiety disorder. Depression.
Clear.
PTSD.
1 in 2. A flip of a coin. That's the same chance we'll experience a mental illness by the time we're 40. $1 a day can help change those odds and bring hope to those in need.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Hi, my name's Ange. I'm from the Angelina Hunter Trio. We will be performing this week as part of Encore Ottawa 3, and we really hope that you enjoy our set.
Laprade Show continues on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Sir, okay, Commission Council has not completed her
I understand, but sir, and your council's advised you that,
No,
I know you've directed,
I'm sorry,
you wanted the
I'm sorry,
application.
I'm speaking.
Yes, sir.
The application, if you want to do it, you've been advised it's to be done in writing, not in the middle of the
Sir, we
presentation.
filed 2 motions in writing at your direction that you've refused to rule on with respect to the redaction of documents from the Government of Canada.
You're speaking,
that has
I'm
not
speaking.
been ruled on, and they've been filed for
I
days.
will take a break while you're asked to leave. I will return in 5 minutes if security could deal with the council.
That was Judge Rouleau asking security to evict convoy lawyer Brendan Miller from the inquiry for arguing with the judge and continuing, as we just heard. We are having lunch today with Cam Holstrom and Julie Bune, and we've been all watching this Emergencies Act so closely. Julie, when you hear this coming out of the Emergencies Act today, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know, part of me is not surprised. There's been definitely a thread of disrespect for due process from the convoy team, but I think also it points to just the stakes that people feel that they're up against, and the desire to be heard. You know, there's it's serious to be excused from the courtroom by a judge.
Mm-hmm.
That is not something that happens very often, and it shows a level of control that the judge needs to apply, which is not good in a courtroom. You know, it's supposed to be about justice, not about shouting down each other.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Julie is the Director of Communications for CA North and East Ontario. Cam Holstrom's also joining us, Principal for Nippewa Strategies. Cam, when you hear that happening today, where does your mind go?
Well, first off, I'm glad that Justice Rouleau did it, because you know what? This is the problem when you're dealing with individuals who, frankly, peddle in conspiracy theories and are looking to make a show of things. Like that's the same lawyer who yesterday made some extremely incendiary and terrible allegations against a private individual. That basically would be, in any other venue, would be open to some kind of sanction. But he did it, throwing out an allegation with apparently no proof for it whatsoever, and leaving that person to defend themselves. And I think that, you know, that's the kind of behavior, if that's the kind of thing they're partaking in, and they're expecting to be able to continue. I'm glad to see Justice Rouleau put down his foot here and put a stop to that, especially before you're getting, you know, the Prime Minister before the inquiry, because I think that's the kind of thing that would be wide open to it if it were to come.
Yeah,
right?
you and I are on the same wavelength. Yeah, you and I are in the same wavelength there, Cam. I was thinking the same thing, and of course, lots more to come from that Emergencies Act inquiry. We're obviously following it very closely. We will continue to do that. Let's shift gears a little bit. Julie, I don't know if you've ever talked about masks before, but let's do that. Masks, of course, the big debate tonight at the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, to mask or not to mask. Where are you on the issue?
Well, you know, it is one of those things that we're all tired of having to do that, but we're seeing more and more people voluntarily putting masks on. They're coming back on at a surprising rate. But I think it's commensurate with what is a very challenging flu season. You know, we haven't had this level of infection. And rising COVID numbers and RSV and all the rest of it for children. I can't see that it's a bad thing to have it mandatory, especially if we're talking about the alternative being kids having to go back to online schooling. It's that I think would be discouraging and would be a trigger for a lot of people. And again, it's not fun, it's not great, but there are a lot of cultures around the world where masking isn't mandatory; it's just universally done. And I said that at the beginning of the pandemic, that it may be something that we just have to adopt as a practice during high flu months.
Just listening to you, I'm remembering the conversation we had, just about 3 years ago now, Julie, when you started making masks. 'Cause
I did, yeah.
For those that don't know you, you're very stylish. And you wanted to bring the style to the masks, and you did a beautiful job. And I know you donated a lot of them, and I appreciate that very much. Cam, what are your thoughts on masking and what the Ottawa Carleton District School Board is attempting to do tonight with this motion from a trustee?
Well, I appreciate the trustee brought this forward and given her professional background. She knows what she's talking about. I guess what frustrates me is that it's putting the school boards in a position to have to do it where Dr. Kieran Moore should have just done it himself. You know what? Like, to me, he's the professional. He's the one who gets paid. He gets paid a big salary and a lot of responsibility to be in charge of public health in this province. And the fact that he ducked it last week because it would be too difficult for him, I got a problem with that. You know, I have no problem admitting mistakes of mine when I make them. When Dr. Moore was appointed to his role after his predecessor, you know, I saw how the work he was doing next door to me here down in Kingston. I thought he was doing a great job. Wow, did I have him pegged wrong? And it frustrates me because, yes, are you going to have a vocal minority of people who are opposed to this? Absolutely. But you know what? Public health is public health. You know what? And if we're not aiming for that, then I don't know what we're doing. I know my own daughter. She had a speed skating meet in Belleville last weekend, or this just past weekend, and that whole week, you know, when she was at school, she was afraid of getting sick. They said, you know what, dear, maybe you want to wear your mask this week just to make sure everything's going to be fine, so you can enjoy what you're going to enjoy, right? And she did. And you know what? When my 10-year-old is able to make more mature take more mature decisions than some of our elected officials or senior civil servants, that scares me.
It's so interesting that you mention about Dr. Kieran Moore, because certainly when he was the public officer of health for the city of Kingston, he was revered. Like, people, you know, really a lot of people from the province were looking to see what Kingston was doing. Ironically, a smaller city than the GTA or even Ottawa, but he was revered. And then you know, Dr. Williams at the time was getting a lot of criticism, and then of course he retired, and Dr. Moore stepped into that position. So I do wonder if some of this is politics. We'll save that for another lunchtime, but it certainly is interesting for me. Let's talk about something that I know are very passionate about, Julie, and that is safety on the roads. Let's talk a little bit about winter tires. I'm going to put my hand up and say I have my winter tires on. I'm so excited. I always book it for around Remembrance Day, and I got them done the week of Remembrance Day. Julie, it's such an important time to do that. Do you have yours on?
I do. Yeah. I put them on this past weekend like a numpty. I didn't check the weather, even though I work for CAA.
Right.
And it's super important. It's something that we talk about a lot. And, there's a lot of science behind changing your tires. You know, the rubber that is used on winter tires is designed specifically for a certain temperature on the road, as well as the tread design is specific. And it's not just tires, of course. It's all the other stuff that you need to do to prepare your car. Our rule of thumb is 7 for 7. So if you are looking at under 7 degrees for 7 days, it's time to change your to your winter tires. By the same token, once you get to the warmer temperatures, if it's over 7 for 7 days, then it's time to put your summer tires back on.
Look at that. I'm going to remember that forever now.
So easy. Easy.
We only have about 30 seconds. Cam, do you have your winter tires on?
I do. Because I knew I was driving on the weekend and I knew that the storm was coming, I made sure I had mine on early in the week. And you know what's interesting is I grew up in the north, you know what, where the roads are always terrible. And
Right.
I never had winter tires growing up because it's just something that you didn't do at the time. But it's one of these things too, is that I think some people need to remember is that winter tires do improve your traction, but they don't make you invincible.
Right.
You still need to drive to the conditions.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And slow
Very
down where you
important.
need to slow down. Because I know my early Sunday morning drive to Belleville, just after the snowstorm passed through, was a bit of white knuckling when I saw people flying down the 401 trying to do 130 on a half covered highway. Yeah, I'm sorry, buddy. Those snow tires didn't give you special powers to float over top of it. You're going to end up in a ditch or worse.
Very,
So
very
slow
good.
down.
Very good reminder. Thank you so much, Cam Holstrom, for joining us today, principal at Nippewa Strategies, and of course, Julie Bune, Director of Communications for CAA North and East Ontario. Thanks for having lunch with me.
Hey, loved
Thanks
it.
for having us.
Appreciate it very much. Lunch with Sam, I enjoy it every single day. We feast on those news stories of the day. Right after the news, everybody, it's the business lunch. Guess who's going to be here? Michael Curran. You're going to want to be here too. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
When an impaired driver killed my brother DJ, my life changed forever. During the pandemic, all of our lives changed, and many of us turned to alcohol and drugs to cope. As life returns to normal, the increase in substance use from COVID has lingered, and some police services report an increase in impaired driving that caused heartbreak and devastation. Now, more than ever, we need your commitment to never drive impaired, and to encourage all of your family and friends to do the same. Together, we can save lives.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the Community Billboard.
This week on Simply Cooking by Chef, simple salads that will last all week in the fridge, give you a burst of flavor, and will please a big crowd.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, November 22nd. Good afternoon. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. Right now in Ottawa, -2, partly cloudy skies. In Smiths Falls, it's 0. Here's what's making news this hour. A lawyer representing organizers of the Freedom Convoy was ejected from the public inquiry into the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act after an exchange with the commissioner. The exchange began when Freedom Corporation lawyer Brendan Miller asked Commissioner Paul Rouleau to add a member of the Public Safety Minister's staff to today's witness list. Now, Miller argued that Marco Mendicino's Director of Communications had important evidence to provide. Rouleau told Miller that he would need to submit a written request to add an unscheduled witness to the hearings, and Miller was then escorted out by security. Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino is one of the 7 witnesses taking the stand today, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will take the stand Friday. Retail sales in Canada fell 0.5% in September to $61.1 billion. Stats Canada says the drop in sales was observed mainly at gas stations, food and beverage stores. And the debate to bring back masks gets underway tonight. Trustees with the Ottawa Carleton District School Board will debate at 6:30 p.m. on whether there should be a temporary mask mandate in public schools once again. We'll hear from public school board trustees, including Dr. Neely Kaplan-Mirth, who is behind a motion to reinstate mask mandates. We'll also hear from Ottawa's top doctor, Vera Etches, and Dr. Lindy Sampson, the Chief of Staff at CHEO. The meeting takes place at 6:30 p.m. City News Time, 12:32. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, it is the business lunch here on City News, and this is the opportunity every single day to connect with business leaders in this community. Sometimes we speak with small business owners. Sometimes we talk with people from associations about business. We always talk about what's happening here in the capital, and I can't think of a better person to have a business lunch with today than Michael Curran from the Ottawa Business Journal. Hi, Michael.
Hey, Sam. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thanks so much for spending time with us here on City News. It's a big week for you.
Yes, it is.
You have launched some new initiatives, but you also have the Bobs happening on Thursday night. Tell us a little bit about the Bobs.
Yeah, we'll start with the Bobs. Yeah, this is one of the biggest annual awards events that we do. Of course, we do it in conjunction with the Board of Trade. And effectively, the goal is to gather the entire business communities, to have people from across the sector, so from tech and real estate and tourism and retail, and really kind of celebrate and build a sense of momentum in the local business community. So we'll be handing out lots of awards. This event has been ongoing from a nominations and awards perspective for many, many months, but I'll highlight 4 really special awards, although everyone's special on Thursday. But we do have our CEO of the Year. That'll be the 23rd year that we're recognizing as CEO of the Year, Kyle Bratz from Fullscript. We've got a CFO of the Year. Fascinating story. Aaron Crow from the Ottawa Senators. Aaron will be, leading kind of the Senators' financials, and as well be a key player in the possible development of a new arena. So fantastic to recognize Aaron. We have a Newsmaker of the Year, Chef Joe from Coconut Lagoon and Valley. You know Chef Joe quite well.
Yes.
What a remarkable man.
Incredible.
Remarkable. And Pat Butler. So our Lifetime Achievement Award goes to Pat Butler from Butler Auto Sales. A man that kind of exists a little bit in the shadow by purpose, but someone who has built a phenomenal business and had a really significant impact on charities here. So we're thrilled. It's coming up on Thursday. It's sold out. I'm sorry to say people can't get tickets anymore,
right.
But you can go to bestottawabusiness.ca to check out more info on the award. And of course, we'll have coverage in OBJ coming up later this week.
For sure. So as if you weren't busy enough, you launched something pretty incredible yesterday, and this is a really interesting business model for the Ottawa Business Journal, ironically. Walk us through what's new.
Yeah, so OBJ is 26 years old, and I hope people would agree that we've done a lot of good in the community in terms of local business journalism. That's squarely where we're focused. And we hope we have a very big impact on covering local businesses and trying to tackle issues, so on and so forth. But for 26 years, Sam, we've effectively had our advertising support all of our journalism. And as we learned during the pandemic, that it's important for organizations of all types, including ours, to have, I'll use a fancy term here, diversified revenue streams.
Right.
So what that really means, though, is, we're really hoping that our readers in the hundreds and thousands will step up and pay a small membership to OBJ. We're calling it the OBJ Insider. So that's the premise. It sounds maybe to some people listening like a small thing, but really it is a fundamental shift in our business model. where we're looking again for local business and community leaders to step up and support our local business journalism in a significant way.
Mm-hmm. And what was the decision like, Michael, to make that decision about the business model? When you said 26 years, I just about fell off my chair because I really felt old when you said that, because I remember when you started it. But what was that first sort of conversation like?
Well, it's a little bit of a bold decision, right? So I think a lot of people who are on social media and internet are accustomed to getting news content for free. That isn't always the case, but it's mostly the case. And it certainly is mostly the case when it comes to local news. Mm-hmm. So it is somewhat of a bold decision for us to step up here. Our proposition is really kind of falls into three kind of ideas. So, please help maintain our viability. We're doing very well, having said that, so I don't want to get anyone worried about our position. We're doing very well. Help support our impact. But the third one that I'll focus on a little bit is help us do more. So the idea isn't even, become an OBJ insider to maintain us. It's to help us expand our coverage. So as you appreciate, Sam, you're in the news business and you've got lots of great people there at City News. We report on a fraction of what we know. Right? Like literally a fraction. I don't know. Is it 1 out of 20 pitches or a piece of information we report on? But there's a lot more we can do. So even though people might say, oh, we love Ottawa Business Journal, we love what it does, we know there's a whole other gear, but we need people's support to get to that gear. So the more they can help us, the more we will invest in our local business journalism.
So would this be, very similar to a subscription model that we would be used to? Are we signing up and it comes off monthly off a credit card, for instance? Is that how the model works?
Yeah, the details are it's $9 a month with an annual commitment. So it's $9 with the annual. I'll emphasize the annual part. Right. But when you do that, then you would come to obj.ca, our website, and you'll start seeing, kind of like the Globe and Mail, by the way, you'll start seeing some articles are behind what we call a paywall. So only people who are logged into the website with OBJ Insider Access will be able to read those articles. Plus, there's some side benefits. We still publish a quarterly news magazine. We have some special publications. The Book of Lists, by the way, it's one of the big ones coming out in February next year. That alone, people pay $45 for. So you become the OBJ Insider mainly to get access to online exclusive content, but then we're going to give you the news magazine on a quarterly basis, the Book of Lists and some other things will be mailed to you, or you can get the digital edition. So it's kind of a multi-pronged offering.
And, you've got a small but mighty team that does this every single day, right? I think about, some of the people that I know that write. I'm blessed to write a monthly column for you for philanthropy in Ottawa. But, I think about someone like Carolyn Phillips, who's out. By the way, she was with me this morning at breakfast because she was covering something for Big Brothers Big Sisters Ottawa. I think about, all the different people that you have in the community that are doing this work. And I don't think there's an appreciation really for what it's like to put out a paper every single weekday.
Yeah, I mean, Caroline Phillips is the great example here, and David Sally who appears on Rob Snow's show on a regular basis. So thank you to Rob. Those would be two of the prime examples, right? These are very seasoned journalists. They have a deep understanding of our community, and they're working really hard every day to report on completely different type of content you won't find in other media. So that's the type of thing. We would like more Caroline Phillips and more David Sallies. And that's effectively, the pitch, what we're asking for here, that as we get more support, we'll expand the editorial team. So
I always ask Carolyn when she sleeps because she's at the evening events and then she was at breakfast. She's everywhere. But really important information. And some of those stories that you've covered over the years, Michael, I mean, I think we forget, because it's a government city, I think we forget how much business actually happens in this city. I mean, I think everything from Nokia to what's happening with the rink for the Senators downtown. I mean, there's so many elements, and we sometimes forget that, yes, we are a government town, but we're a business town.
I mean, you're playing. Your comment there kind of touches on, why OBJ exists. And the federal government and the public sector cast a long shadow in the city, and we should appreciate that. It's economic impact and all the terrific people. But there's another Ottawa, right? And you see it all the time too in the business community. And there are fascinating. Again, David Sally talks to Rob Snow frequently about this. Fascinating global companies that are based here. Remarkable work. And we can't forget those people. They need attention. We need to share information from these companies to help inform other business leaders, and also to create a sense of momentum so that people feel proud to work here and proud to establish companies here.
Beautifully said. And, the talent piece is so key too, right? I mean, a lot of people are looking to the OBJ to sort of get that information about how to attract talent to their companies. Because I think about Ross Video, and I think about, all of the Canada Tech Park and then the little business down the street. I mean, everybody's struggling for talent. So there's been some great content in the Ottawa Business Journal regarding talent acquisition as well.
Yeah, I'd say, since we've encountered the pandemic, there's taken two new coverage areas. The talent piece, as you said, there's always been demand for talent, but now that issue is much more complicated, right? With hybrid work and the ability for people to work anywhere, everywhere, that's particularly complicated when you start talking to people in the tech sector and they're making decisions when they need to find world-class talent, whether they're hiring here or elsewhere. So that's one of the big issues. The other big issue that we really want to dig our teeth into, and we're doing regular coverage on, is the future of downtown. So I don't think anyone should be taking a strong downtown for Ottawa, and I'm not trying to create a sense of panic on that for granted. There are some pretty fundamental challenges with the shift to hybrid work. We've seen many other North American cities, some probably pop to mind, that have seen effectively their downtowns weaken. We can't have that in our city, right? That creates all sorts of economic problems. It creates all sorts of social problems. So this is something that I know at OBJ we really want to keep a close eye on. We've already done a ton of reporting, and there's a lot more to come.
Appreciate it very much, Michael. All the best for the Bobs on Thursday night. I'm sending my positive vibes, and I know everybody will have a great time, and look forward to hearing all about it.
Yeah, and thanks to you, Sam, and what you're doing, and also City News, too. You guys are playing. I just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of people in that rowboat, that media rowboat, that are doing a great job, and City News is certainly a big player, too, and getting better and better.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Michael. Michael Curran, publisher of the Ottawa Business Journal. Appreciate him joining us for the Business Lunch. When we come back, we're going to find out what is hot from a consumer perspective for the holiday season. We're also going to meet a small business owner by the name of Michelle Vandenbosch. She is from Rebel Petal. We're going to talk about the business of flowers. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hi everybody, my name is Brian Aslan and I'm with the Commotions. We are performing Encore Ottawa 3 this week. Be sure to tune in.
On Tuesday's Daytime Ottawa, we'll tell you about local artisans, a great place to find some wonderful handmade gift ideas. And the Christmas Smiles campaign is back. This is being put on by W Flowers. We'll tell you how you can get involved and really help put a smile on someone's face over the holiday season. And the month of November is Diabetes Awareness Month. In this particular segment, we're going to talk about prevention. All that and more on Tuesday.
Everybody knows not to drink and drive, but some people still think it's okay to take drugs and drive. Police have the authority, the ability, and the tools to determine if drivers are impaired by legal or illegal drugs. And because drug-impaired drivers can pose just as great a risk as drunk drivers, they face the same penalties, like the loss of their driver's license, a criminal record, fines, and more. A message from the RCMP, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, and Arrive Alive, Drive Sober.
Hey folks, it's me, Giovanni Patiti, the host of the RTV quiz show, the hottest show on television. It's the hilarious quiz show where you, the viewers, play for valuable non-existent prizes. It's got great trivia, fun facts, and a lot of laughs, all blended together in a perfect cocktail of edutainment. So join us Wednesdays at 7:30 right here on Rogers TV. Nice.
Bipolar disorder.
Substance addiction. Bulimia. OCD. Want to swap?
1 in 2. A flip of a coin. That's the same chance we'll experience a mental illness by the time we're 40. $1 a day can help change those odds.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
On City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, if you're wondering what the holiday trends are, you've come to the right place. The Business Lunch on City News. We wanted to get caught up today with Chloe Baffert. How are you, Chloe?
I'm great. How are you, Sam?
Good. Senior Manager, Merchandising and Curation at Poshmark. That's a pretty cool job.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. That's
fantastic. So tell us what's trending this year for the holidays.
Yeah, so secondhand is something obviously that's very true to Poshmark and something that we're definitely seeing trending this holiday season. We're really seeing two major trends come together. With ongoing inflation, it's really prompting consumers to look for deals, and are in Poshmark. So this year we launched Secondhand Sunday, which is our first ever day dedicated to supporting secondhand sellers and circular fashion. So really gifting secondhand is huge this season.
That's amazing. What are some of the top items?
Yeah, so it really ranges, for children, obviously the holidays are a big season. So things like toy cars, which are obviously a classic childhood toy, are still a winner, which we're seeing they're up 686% year over year. And then newcomers like Funko Pops continue to be really a top purchase with orders up 375%. And then we are also seeing, with secondhand comes deals and lower priced items. So this is really a chance to buy luxury. So we're seeing brands like Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and Chanel have, really best-selling items this year. And the newcomers like Balenciaga really surging as well, as kind of dipping into the Y2K trend.
Mm-hmm. And is there specifically, for men and women, typically there's some decisions there that have to be made. Sometimes guys have a hard time to shop for us. What are some suggestions there?
Yeah, definitely. I know it's always tough with the men buying for their wives. So this year we actually saw something that I find really interesting, which is skinny jeans are completely gone. We saw orders up for the wide leg pants and jumpsuits 30%.
Wow.
So it's really a great opportunity for men to, buy for their wives something that is trending and timely. And we're also seeing a great gift, as we're gathering around finally this year post-COVID, is kind of hosting tools. So kitchen tools are up 70%, Tupperware is up 185%, La Crusette. So anything that's really that keepsake home memorabilia.
Oh, that's so interesting. And what about the guys?
Yeah, for the guys, it's actually really interesting. So there's a trend called Gorpcore, which is really functional fashion, so kind of taking on a new spin. So there's brands like Arc'teryx, which are really leading this. And so we're seeing cargo pants have a huge presence with this, Canada Goose, Patagonia fleece. So really that where function meets fashion there. With cargo pants it was up 81%,
Wow.
So it's things like that. And men always, lead more with the function. So definitely leaning into that.
Well, I have to tell you, I've got a couple of young producers, young male producers, and they both looked my way when you said what you were saying about what to get guys. So I think you would definitely hit something there. What are some of the things you're thinking about for this holiday season that maybe aren't on our radar regularly?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, going back to secondhand, and when we think about holiday gifting, we think about, whether it's new, is kind of what we tend to lead with in the past. But with secondhand, the way that we're kind of shifting the perspective here is you're gifting something with a story and you're gifting something at a valuable price. And so what Poshmark has that I think is really interesting in terms of, we have new tax items, we have things like cargo pants, but we also have vintage items that are, definitely very covetable, whether it's vintage jewelry and things that have a history behind it, that may not be first to think of when you're gifting someone, whether it's a vintage band tee. There's more thought that goes into it. So I definitely think that's kind of where the mindset is shifting and where gifts are really evolving from just, here's socks in your stocking to here's something with some real meaning behind it.
Excellent. Well, that's the perfect way for us to end today. Thank you so much, Chloe, for spending time with us.
Of course. Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you. Chloe Baffert joining us, Senior Manager Merchandising and Curation at Poshmark. I think that's the first time I've wished somebody happy holidays this year. So there you go. It's coming very, very quickly, as we know. And I don't have to tell Michelle Vandenbosch how quickly it's coming. She's from Rebel Pedal in beautiful Manotick. How are you, Michelle?
I'm great, Sam. How are you?
Good. We tore you away from your beautiful flowers to spend a few minutes with us today to talk about the business of flowers. How is business?
Business is great. Our business has completely gone online and over the phone. We learned a lot of things in the last 2.5 years, and I have decided to keep our retail aspect of our business closed. And so we sell all kinds of fun things online and over the phone. Today is a little different because the construction next door has cut my internet and phone line. So we're working off of my, iPhone 9 maybe. But things Bell's here now, and things will get back in order very quickly. Wow. But this model definitely keeps my team safe, and productivity has certainly soared, and we're loving it.
Well, I know, Michelle, when I have something really special, I want to send somebody. I reach out to you. You do some beautiful work, really unique work. I mean, the power of flowers, if you will, it has just seemed to still maintain through COVID, and that was a good thing.
Absolutely. I have been in the floral industry for 36 years, and I really, pre-pandemic, believed that my business was more of a luxury item. And what I learned very quickly in the beginning of the pandemic was that I definitely fall under the mental wellness category. We continued to send flowers to people as little, pick-me-ups and get-wells. And some of the stories that I heard, there was a lot of depression through our early stages of our pandemic, and still now. But certainly some of the stories, we had one woman who called me and thanked me because somebody sent her flowers, and it was the first time she had gotten out of bed in 2 days. Wow. Because the world was just too heavy. And she said, I've just spent the last hour staring at these beautiful flowers. Thank you.
Wow, that's really lovely, Michelle. And I think, this is an opportunity during this holiday season to maybe do something a little bit different. And I was on your site the other day, and I noticed that you can do sort of a subscription, a flower subscription. And I've never heard of that before.
So we have a monthly subscription, and we have some clients who use it monthly. We have other clients who we send flowers to every 2 weeks. I will tell you that the husbands who have bought this for their wives, and there are multiple men on our list, have repeatedly said that this is the best gift they've ever given.
Wow.
And so once a month, we decide the day based on shipments and what's available at the time. And then we send out between, I think our value is somewhere between $38 for our least expensive item up to $200, and so everything in between as well. There's lots of options,
right?
And then we send that out, and the person gets to enjoy the flowers.
Beautiful. not only creative with your gorgeous flowers, but creative business model as well. And, definitely give Michelle a shout. I hope you have a great, busy Christmas season. And I know how hard you work, Michelle. Thanks so much for spending time with us on the Business Lunch.
Thank you. You're so kind. Enjoy. Have a happy holiday.
You
I'll
too.
be your second.
There you go. There's the second one. Absolutely. Michelle Van Den Bosch joining us from Rebel Petal. Once again, very creative, not only with her flowers, but with her business model. I am seeing our team get ready to bring you the news of the afternoon. There are lots of news stories that we're following here. You'll want to lock it in. Danielle Bain is all ready for you. Lock it in to City News.
You've been listening to the Sam Laprade Show.
Tune in again for local news and community views on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.